Good evening, everyone. I am trying to promote everyone, so give me a second.
Allison, just checking my mic. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we're missing two people who are not here yet. I'll give them one more minute, and then we'll get started. Okay, well, why don't we get started, because we don't want to waste people's time. And if Audrey, Commissioner Walker, or Commissioner Huff join us, we will just promote them at that time. So I will call the meeting to order. It is 7:03, and if Commissioner Gilligan could take the roll, I would appreciate it.
Good evening, everybody. 4B01.
Present.
4B02.
Present.
4B03.
Present.
4B04.
Present.
4B05 is myself, present. 4B06.
Present.
4B07.
Present.
4B08. 4B09.
At this point. Okay. Okay, I just got a message just for the record from Commissioner Huff. She's getting home from work and will log on within 15 minutes.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, wonderful. So with that, we'll move to our administrative items. As we've been doing for the past many months, we bring to everyone's attention that in a virtual environment, we ask that you use the raise your hand function, and we'll recognize you and give you the opportunity to speak. You can also dial *9 from your phone. And with that, I'll move on to consideration and approval of the agenda. Are there any? I have one change to the agenda, which is we have a presentation that we would like to add from the DC Public Library, giving them 10 minutes to present and 10 minutes for discussion. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, I'm going to
withdraw the 4B 230405 resolution.
Mhm.
And just some context there. This is going to be, the plan is to reintroduce it in the future after we've had a chance to have a conversation with ANC 4A, ANC 4B, and ANC 4D, potentially facilitated by DC Public Library.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So with those two changes, is there a motion to, well, I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as modified. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think that's everyone. All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which would then be commissioner updates. So I'm sorry, that's not the case. It's the approval of the March 2023 public minutes. Did everyone have the opportunity to review the revised minutes that were submitted?
Yeah, let me just say, I sent out the minutes initially April 10th, and I followed up today. Commissioner Palmer gave me one correction, which I followed up with that correction in there. So it's a count, numerical count issue, but that was corrected. And then I just spotted I didn't have Commissioner Yates noted as present from the holdover from the previous version in February, but I now have him in the minutes as well. But otherwise, no change from what y'all have seen.
How did I miss that? Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented?
I moved to for that. Yeah.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that looks like everyone. Thank you very much. From there, we'll go to the treasurer's report and approval of the quarterly financial report. And Audrey is not on the call, so give me a second and I will pull it up and share my screen and then go over it with everyone. This is our second quarter 2023 financial report. And luckily, I have my email open. At least I think I do. I'm sorry, normally I would have opened this up beforehand and I didn't expect to have to do this. Okay. Share my screen here. Okay, so at the start of the quarter, we had $50,454.97. We received one allotment for $66,498.86. And we earned interest of $50.94. So total funds available to us during the quarter were $57,004.77. We had a $6 bank charge and we ended the quarter at $56,998.77. The reason that we did not spend any money in the first quarter is because we had to get our security agreement in place, security fund agreement in place before we could write checks. So it basically took a couple of months for us to get that in order because we first had to vote on it in the January meeting. And then in February, early February, we had to submit it. And by the time we did all of that, the quarter was over. So a very easy report to approve. With that, I will submit the report as presented. Are there any questions about the report? No. Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve the quarterly financial report as submitted. And let me make sure I have my language correct because obviously, and I'm going to stop my share. Obviously, we have very specific wording around what it is we're supposed to say. Yes, we're approving the 2023 Q2 quarterly financial reports. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any, I think that's everyone. All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll keep moving right along and we'll go to commissioner updates, and we'll just go in numerical order for now. 4B01.
Good evening, everyone. The major updates would have been about Shepherd Park Library, but I'll defer to the presentation from the library. Also want to give a special thanks to WASA and an independent company, I'm not sure of their name, for coming out on Sunday actually, and working very hard and quickly to resolve a clogged line or a broken line on the street. So thank you for that. Also, we'll be working with constituents on the 9th Street. There's concern about several trees being removed by DDOT. So we're following up with that, and I'll have updates about our trees and how potentially we can preserve them. Those are the only updates right now for 4B01.
Thank you. 4B02.
Thank you so much. The first thing I wanted to highlight is on behalf of Tacoma Elementary School, which is doing their hype squad for students that are about to start for park testing. So on Tuesday, April 25th, tomorrow, and Thursday, April 27th, members of the community are gathering in front of the school from 8:15 to 9 in the morning to give high fives and fist bumps to kids going in for their testing. It's a really nice and easy opportunity for service, and I hope that folks will come out. Also just wanted to give some gratitude for our spring break week of cleanups, and to Commissioner Gilligan and Commissioner Brooks for joining up on that, and Tacoma Main Street and Georgia Avenue.
Thank
We
you.
have
Am I the one? Is it my internet that's bad? Okay. So we're having trouble hearing you, Commissioner Palmer. So we're going to come back.
45 really wonderful. So thank you.
Okay.
That's all for me.
All right. 4B.
Did I freeze?
Yep, you did. But we got the gist of it. Okay. Who would be next? 4B03.
I just want to say I enjoyed the cleanups this past week, and it was quite the experience. Commissioner Brooks, I was going to sneak up on you this Saturday, but the wife called, so I have to do my
understand.
my husband duties.
I understand.
But I actually enjoyed it. Commissioner Gilligan, it was nice connecting with you as well. And so I honestly look forward to meeting and connecting with all of you in person. I know we do a lot of things virtually, but if we can connect in person, that would be wonderful. So that's all I have.
Right. All right. 4B04.
No update at this time, Chair.
Okay. 4B05.
Just echoing the gratitude for the past week of cleanups. I wish I could have made them all, including Commissioner Johnson's cleanup, but didn't. Just not enough time in the week. And I just wanted to note that with the new trash bins that have been installed, particularly the ones on the corner of 9th and Quackenbo's, as the Peabody Community Gardens are doing their spring cleaning, we're seeing just the bags from the gardeners being put by those cans, which is overcrowding them. I'm aware of it, and I'll be speaking with the community gardeners about that issue. But otherwise, no other updates. Thanks.
Okay, great. 4B06.
Just a couple of things really quick. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone from ANC 4B who came out to the myriad of events that ANC 4B06 had the past 2 weeks. That's greatly appreciated. And also we had some special guests from neighboring jurisdictions who also came out. So that was also really fun. Going forward next month for ANC 4B06 Day in Banner Park, we will be having yoga at Fort Slocum Park, and Commissioner Judson, who is also a trained yoga instructor, will be leading that. So I hope people will come out to attend that as well. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, 4B07.
Great, thank you. Just a few quick items. I wanted to recognize the Lamont Community Action Group cleanup, and as well as Commissioner Gilligan's cleanup. Thanks for hosting those, as well as the Jobs Not Guns job fair at Coolidge. Also, I'm continuing to hold office hours at Lamont Recreation Center every Wednesday, including this Wednesday, from 12 to 1, and then virtual office hours from 1 to 2. I should have a new newsletter coming out in the next week and a half. So not next week, but the following, early. And I think that's, oh yeah, and I wanted to say job well done to Commissioner Johnson for her rodent abatement walk, which I attended and have been inspired to hold one of those as well. Potentially May 6th is what I'm looking at, but I'm still working that out with DC Department of Health. But I will keep everyone posted and updated on that. Thanks.
Okay, so I am 4B08, and so my update surrounds soliciting anyone that might be interested in signing up for the composting program. I'm looking for one person in the community that would be interested in signing up. So if you are interested and have yet to sign up, please reach out to me so that I can provide you with some information around how to obtain a composting setup. Also, Commissioner Cohen, I forgot to mention this to you when I spoke with you earlier. There is some dumping on New Hampshire Avenue on your side of New Hampshire Avenue, but it's, you know, your side, my side, doesn't matter. But someone dumped a bunch of stuff on New Hampshire Avenue on the bridge. And so I'm going to be putting in a 311 request for that. I took a picture of it earlier today, and hopefully they'll get that picked up quickly. And there's been a lot of dumping between, let's say, Chillum Place and, you know, Riggs Road. And so this area is a hot spot for that, and we're trying to work to get that resolved. Welcome, Commissioner Walker. Do you have an update? We filled in for you and submitted, reviewed the treasurer's report and voted on it before you got on.
Thank you. My apologies. Zoom was messing up. And I think Aaron had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Aaron, go ahead. Commissioner Palmer.
Yes, I just wanted to flag because Commissioner Chair Brooks, I think you were going to mention it, the Earth Day Resource Fair.
I was, thank you. So ANC 4B, for those that are not aware, the executive committee has been working on a Earth Day Resource Fair, which will be held at Whittier Elementary School on Saturday, April 29th. Commissioner Palmer, give me the dates, the times real quick, 10 to...
Yep, it's 11 a.m.
11
to 2 p.m.
to
So
2 p.m. Thank you very much.
After the Frank R. Williams Scholarship Fund walk and before Porch Fest, a nice event to put in between those two.
Yeah, so there will be lots of presentations there. We're hoping to have, you know, kids activities, some snacks for them, some fun and face painting potentially. So if you're interested in donating your time or just coming out and learning more about some of the green activities that you can find at various agencies, please come on out. Commissioner Cohen?
Yeah, just to clarify, Chair Brooks, I think you might have, when you were talking about New Hampshire Avenue, I think that might be Commissioner Huff's area.
You're right. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, in the past, it would have been Commissioner Brommagen, and I'm still used to the old mapping. So I'll mention that to her also.
Okay, great.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Walker.
No major updates. I'll have office hours this Thursday, the 27th, I believe that's the date, between 6 and 7 p.m. And I also wanted to let everyone know that I have partnered with a nonprofit called Tickets for Kids that provides free tickets for the Nats games, Defenders, XFL, soccer, you name it. So I'm definitely want to talk to my colleagues about that, but just definitely want to let the public know that I do have a lot of tickets for sale because I partner with this nonprofit, not for sale, for free. And I definitely want to pay it forward because they're just sitting in this portal and it's just for family, friends to have fun and to get out and see some new sporting events. So more to come about that. And again, I would like to talk to my colleagues more about that so that we can kind of disperse these tickets among all of our constituents.
Okay, wonderful. We're going to move on now to community concerns. So please use the raise your hand function or dial *9 if you're on your phone, and you'll have 1 minute to speak, and we'll go from there. Let me start with, well, it's going in alphabetical order. So Commissioner Yates, I'll promote and you'll take them down. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll read anything in the chat.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Mr. Collins.
Thank you. I am a resident of ANC. I forget which number I am now, but I'm on Piney Branch Avenue. And I think everyone is aware of the tragic motorcycle accident that claimed the life of an MPD officer last week. I regularly hear speeding cars coming down this road several times a week, often in the early morning or the wee hours of the night. And while I know there's been work to improve the infrastructure to discourage speeding, I think more needs to be done. Specifically, I would call on this commission to ask for speed cameras on Piney Branch Avenue, as well as potentially unrelated to this, but similar problems with the need for a red light camera at Georgia and Aspen Street. There is just ongoing speeding that treats this residential neighborhood as a highway, and more needs to be done to discourage it. I think automated traffic enforcement would be very helpful in that regard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does any commissioners need to respond? Commissioner Yates?
Yeah, I would just say that in 2020, June of 2020, this commission by resolution called for traffic calming measures along the length of Piney Branch Road and included the consideration of speed and enforcement cameras at that time. So just to be clear that we have officially weighed in with DDOT pushing for traffic calming, at least those of us who were on the commission at the time.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Pratt, you're next. Are you there? You're muted.
Okay, is that better?
Much better. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. I wanted to reintroduce myself. I was on at your last meeting, and I'm part of the Kumi Construction Management team who is helping to oversee the DC plug work that's happening in Tacoma Park and Manor Park, primarily right now. Of course, the whole project is happening throughout the city, but that's the one that affects ANC 4B. So I wanted to let everyone know that we have started posting our 2-week look ahead, and I'm going to put the link into the chat before I leave, but also that the last time I gave some information related to how to find out more about the project, as well as how to contact both our community liaison office, how to look up some of the information related to ANC 4B, as well as the other projects. So I just wanted to let you know that my information, I can put that on there as well to be reached out. I have a colleague, Ann Walters, who works closely with me to make sure that we are touching base and getting information, ideally as far in advance of construction, but the construction is happening now. The 2-week look ahead will give you an opportunity to see how the work is progressing. We try to put up the latest one on every Monday.
All right, well, thank you.
So I'm here also, I'll put that in there, but I'm also here to answer questions, or I'll make sure you have my information as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. Commissioners, anyone have a comment or concern? Nope. Thank you very much, Ms. Pratt.
Thank you all.
All right, next. Oh, before we continue, Commissioner Huff arrived, so I'm going to promote her. Hi, Commissioner Huff, how are you? Commissioner?
Sorry, I'm
Okay.
good.
All
Thank you
right.
very much. Sorry. I'm
You're
late.
good. Everyone else was able to give their community update. Before I move on to the rest of the constituents, do you have an update that you want to share, or do you want to just hang on for a while and get in the
So
groove?
just really quickly, I had the SMD meeting with DDOT at the Ridge LaSalle Recreation Center. So Mr. Zachary Anderson came out. He got about 30 things to look at. There were a lot of residents there, so it was a good meeting. So there'll be some follow-up to follow. Also, I don't know whether or not in our community, we had the LRCA 75th anniversary, which was really, really nice on Saturday. So I think that's pretty much it, except some public safety issues that we still have to work through. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
You too.
All right, with that, I'm going to elevate Ms. Tate. Hi, Ms. Tate, how are you?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm well. Thank you for asking. Just wanted to stay connected and keep pushing around that public safety policy piece. Things are quiet right now, so I want to thank Commissioner Carlson on behalf of my sister, Abina. But again, we still want to just get some follow-up. I think the last time we talked about the suspect being identified, but don't know if he had actually been apprehended again. So I wanted to know if there was any further follow-up behind that. Also wanted to know if any of the policy changes that we recommended were going to be taken up by Councilmember Lewis George's office. I know you had been in contact with their office. So I wanted to know if there was any follow-up behind that. Commissioner.
Wait, let's take them one at a time.
Oh,
Because we're going
I
to
only had a minute. So, and I can send this to you as I usually do in an email.
Okay.
Minute. My last two was just Miss Barbara and Councilmember Lewis George's office talked about a study being done on a number of facilities within an area, not just for 4B, but for Ward 4. So we wanted to know if there was any movement on that. And my last.
So hold on, because I know I don't think Ms. Colson nor I's memory is that good. So let's go. Let's start with the councilwoman's office doesn't necessarily report back to the commission on their day-to-day activities. So if Ms. Barbara was going to do something, and she is here, so she'll have the opportunity to respond. But you need to reach out to her directly for that, because I'm not even aware specifically of what it is you're talking about right now. And I don't know that Ms. Colson is either, Commissioner Colson is either.
Okay.
And then as far as apprehending a suspect or any information from MPD, we typically wouldn't get that either.
Okay.
Unless we, pursued them for that information. I think you said one more. Oh, legislation or not legislation, but
policy recommendation.
Policy is determined by the councilwoman's office and not the ANC.
Okay.
So again, I would have to refer you to Ms. Barbara for that. And I want to I'm saying it now because one, I don't want to forget, and two, I want other residents to understand also what our role is versus what their role is.
Okay, and I guess I asked it as a twofold question because I do know that while policy and legislation lies with the council, just being a former commissioner, I know that I've pushed or helped to push through making resolutions, not to say that it'll be accepted or that it'll happen, but just any help or follow-up we can get behind that. And then lastly, just the accountability of the service provider. The last time we mentioned that there was a site visit, but again, we had no, just as much public information that can be shared. What was the status of that? So, but again, I can send that to you in an email. Just wanted to stay connected and keep pushing for some changes.
So, Commissioner Colson, do you have anything you need to add?
No, I look forward to your email. I'll follow up with you. I am able to say that because the incident with the person, if you will, was separate from the facility. So all of your recommendations were forward on, but there was not an additional push with the facility because that incident was isolated and not connected to the facility. But I'm happy to read your concerns again and follow up as best I can to support.
Cool beans. Thank you.
You're
Have a
welcome.
good evening, everyone.
Thank you. I almost say have a good evening, but you're going to be on the call. So,
Yes, ma'am.
all right. Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. So with that, we'll move to the reports from,
A couple things in the Q&A.
Okay.
I'm going to drop the link from the DC Plug folks into the chat so that everybody can see it. And Kimberly Harrington asked that we continue to raise awareness of 988 as the new suicide and crisis lifeline nationwide number. As she says, Metro is doing a great job with their signage, and there is more information available online, and I'll drop that in the chat as well.
okay. Thank you for that, Kimberly. Okay, so we're going to move to Sophia Takola's presentation from the Mayor's Office on Community Relations and Services, and I'm going to promote her now. Good evening.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Let me make sure that I can put stuff in the chat. Wonderful. Actually, is it possible to make it so I can send all these links I'm about to talk about to everybody? It just says I can only send them to the host and panelist right now.
Go ahead and send them, and then we'll repost them.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So hi, I'm going to make this short and sweet because I know we have a really busy schedule and some of the things that you already briefly mentioned on. But as a reminder, we have two really fun events happening in Ward 4 this week. The first one being the Frank R. Coolidge Scholarship Walk. And so as a reminder, we will be meeting Saturday, April 29th at 8 to 10 a.m. for a chance to help give our seniors at Coolidge a scholarship for future success outside of this area. In addition to that, like I believe Commissioner Palmer briefly mentioned, we do have the Petworth Porch Fest happening right after for their rescheduled rain date, and that will be Saturday again from 2 to 6 p.m. Coming up next, we have the DC Tax Revision Commission, and this is chaired by former Mayor Anthony Williams, and we are inviting members of the public to two town halls. There's one in person and another one in virtual. And so the in-person town hall, I'll make sure to send the link, but that will be on the in-person one will be on Monday, May 1st from 7 p.m. at the West Black Box Theater in Southeast. And the virtual town hall will be Thursday, May 4th at 6:30 p.m. 4B came out this week, as all of y'all know, for Earth Day. It looks absolutely amazing. Before I go into more of that, as a question to the commissioners, are there still bags of trash that need to get picked up?
Yes.
Wonderful. I will talk to you afterwards because we have a plan. In addition to that, April is the beautification month, and DPW is helping communities go above and beyond with organizing Saturday cleanups in conjunction to Clean City. And so their program is now called the Helping Hands Program. This program will lend toolkits that include 5 rakes and brooms, 2 shovels, and 20 trash bags. A $20 refundable deposit is required for all toolkits loaned out under the Helping Hands Program. As a reminder, Clean City, there is not a refundable cost, but you aren't getting the brooms, the shovels, and the rakes. But that money will be back as long as I get back all of those tools. And then in addition to that, there is the free compost that can be picked up as well for use in the neighborhood. And as of right now, Ward 4 has the most requests for compost, which is really cool to see how much Ward 4 as a whole has stepped up. And this is across all 8 wards. Ward 4 is paving the way of composting, which is absolutely wonderful. And then I will make sure to send in the link for DPW's Helping Hands. In addition to that, later in this meeting, we will be talking to Chancellor Fearby, and when that goes on, a request we have as smokers and DCPS is if both I and Quentin Floyd can still be on the call, so we are able to send in links while he is talking. That is all I have, and welcome to any questions.
Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. I really quickly wanted to echo something that one of my 4B02 residents raised earlier, which is related to the motorcycle crash that happened at Piney Branch and Aspen. And to note that while I often receive updates about incidents within the SMD, I received no notification from anybody about that or additional details. I heard from a lot of neighbors and would have appreciated some outreach there. We've also followed up with the council member's office and DDOT about, as Commissioner Yates mentioned, the commission has weighed in heavily about traffic calming along Piney Branch, including promises to lower the speed limit for that stretch from 30 to 25, which was part of the original proposal. And we have been promised that reduction and it has not gone into place. It is a very small and easy to change just bit of traffic calming that would help for that stretch. Certainly not the full suite of what might be necessary, but something that should be implemented quickly.
Absolutely. Do you know how long ago that there was the ask to DDOT for the switch to be 30 to 25 mile per hour?
Yeah, I can forward you the email exchange. It was part of the notice of intent in 2021.
Thank you. That would be greatly appreciated and very helpful at this time with everything going on.
Okay, I have a question. We have residents in the 5500 block of 4th Street Northeast that requested speed humps. There's a problem with speeding in that area, mostly because there's a decline on the street, right? It's going downhill.
Yeah.
And the request for speed humps was denied because it's on a hill. But it recently came to my attention. I never knew this before. I didn't realize it, I guess, but there are no sidewalks there. And so people walk in the street. And so I sent an email last year and again this year, last year when we made the request for the speed humps, but this year requests were submitted and emails were sent to DDOT, and I've never gotten a response or an acknowledgement to my email. And so I'm asking for your assistance in getting resolution to a sidewalk request. Right, we would like to have sidewalks installed there.
And then the request is for sidewalks on both sides of the road?
Yes, and I would think that if there was a traffic safety, a TSI requested and completed, the fact that sidewalks aren't on the street would be something that they would have addressed at that time, and they did not.
And then, sorry, I missed it. What month and year did you say the original request was put out?
June 2022. And then I followed up again. Oh no, April 2022 was when the 311 request was put in. June 2022, we asked them to respond. And then April of 2023, this month, I emailed again about the sidewalks, and I just to date have not gotten a response.
Okay, I'll message you about that with our DDOT representatives.
Thank you. Commissioner Yates.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the mayor's talking today about spending public money on a new football stadium. Do you think that's going to be a policy priority for her going forward?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't have much history on that.
Thanks. I look forward to it.
Anyone else have a question or concern? Okay, it looks like there's a resident with their hand up. So we'll take that call. Go ahead. If your number's ending in 610, you can dial *9 and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. This is Jocelyn Johnson, and I just want to ask you a couple of things. I don't think I heard you say anything about clean alleys or your progress. Just I thought I saw that I saw that advertised somewhere, maybe with Councilmember George's office. I'm not sure, but I wanted to know about bringing a couple of alleys to your attention. Is that something I can bring to you?
For sure. And this is perfect Yes, can you hear me all right?
I can, when you give your contact information, I can
Yeah.
call you with them.
Wonderful.
Okay, and the other thing, the other question I have is kind of a follow-up on the question about the football, mayor's effort to do a football stadium, but I'm concerned about her not talking about trying to get the forensic lab back into DC so we can process our crime issues. So I would hope that you let her know that I'm sure there are residents who want to know what her process is or what her priority is when you talk about a football stadium versus getting a crime lab in DC so they don't have to keep on sending that kind of stuff out of state. It has a lot of triple negative consequences. We need to get that done. So she got the kind of money she needs to take care of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
Funny. Anyway, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then Miss Johnson, I know I have your phone number, but just so everyone is clear on my phone number, it is 202-436-2087, and everyone is more than welcome to email me at Sophia, SOPHIA .T as in Tom, EKOLA @dc.gov. And yes, as everyone is aware, alleyway cleanings are possible. It is spring, and that is a possibility for sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, I think with that, I do not see any other hands. Are there any other questions in the chat?
No, Chair Brooke.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now elevate Barbara Rogers from Councilmember Louis George's office. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Hello, 4B.
Hello.
How are you all?
Think we're
I
doing
will
well.
be quick because I know that Chair Brooks runs a tight ship. And I remember last month I went a little too long, so we'll be quick. First off, our office, we really want to thank all the ANC commissioners and the Ward 4 residents who showed up and testified at the council's budget oversight hearing. This week, the council committees are releasing their updated budget for the agencies under their oversight based on feedback that residents shared during the oversight hearing. After that, the budget will go before the council for 2 votes. Councilmember Louis George will announce her proposed changes to the budget soon. She, of course, is fighting to secure additional Ward 4 investments to restore funds to emergency rental assistance and more funding for violence prevention programs and, of course, for our schools. This is just for 4B. Councilmember Louis George wants to thank the entire ANC 4B for their participation in the Ward 4 job fair. We had a great turnout, great employers, and many new connections were made. The council member and our team are also looking forward to Earth Day Resource Fair. That was just mentioned at Whittier. I will be there, so I will see you all there. Councilmember Louis George met with the Whittier PTO and school leaders this morning and looks forward to continuing to support the school, community, and its needs. Litter cans, you all may know that after legislation from Councilmember Louis George and strong advocacy from our ANCs, shout out to ANC 4B, DPW has updated its process for requesting litter cans to be installed. Community members can now request a public litter can to be installed on the 311 website, mobile app, or the call center. DPW will stop removing litter cans without engaging the ANC commissioners. So that's a win-win. DC Medicaid. One really important update is that for the first time since before the pandemic, DC residents will need to renew their Medicaid coverage from April 1st, 2023 to June 1st, 2024. The first step would be to take a visit to the website, which is districtdirect.dc.gov on their computer. We also have that information on our website, and I'm happy to put that in the chat. Or you can go to, it is for those on the phone, JaniceWard4.com. And finally, if you are not on our newsletter, please sign up for our newsletter to receive updates. We do a weekly newsletter that comes out every Friday that is full of resources for the community and actually just keeps you up to date on everything Ward 4. And you can go to ward4news.com to sign up for our newsletter. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question? Any commissioner have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Allison. Can I just address a couple of things that was mentioned earlier? Mr. Kevin Collins, about his request for traffic cameras on Piney Branch. We did get your email. Jim Lewis from our office did escalate your request. And if he did not respond to you today, he will respond to you first thing in the morning. And then for the resident, Miss T.N. Tate, please give me a call and we can address all of your issues. My phone number is 202-288-9820. And then for curbside composting, I went on, as you all know, Saturday, we had a couple of events, but I went on at 9:00 p.m. to try to sign up. Ward 4 was closed. So Ward 4 definitely showed up for this. But all the other wards were open, but Ward 4 was closed. So that's all I have. Thank you all so much.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to the council member for participating in Spring Cleanup Week, for the job fair over the weekend, and for your participation in the Earth Day Resource Fair. And I wanted to flag that we have a resolution coming your way about addressing abandoned shopping carts, which is an issue that we have raised with your office. So please keep your eye out for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Cohen.
Hey, Barbara, good to see you again. I just had two quick questions. The first was similar to Commissioner Yates's question. I was curious if the council member supports the stadium as well. I think the last I heard that she was sort of a no comment. And I'm just curious if that was because she was leaning one way or another or just didn't have an opinion. I don't know if you know or need to get back on that.
I will definitely get back with you on that.
Okay, and the second part of that is I'm curious as to whether the council member supports Councilmember Robert White's Pathways to Mental Health bill that he's introduced.
Pathway to Mental Health. I will get back with you on that as well.
Great. And I think the technical term is Pathways to Behavioral Health Degrees Act.
I'm sorry, what was the last part, Michael?
I think the official name of the bill is Pathways to Behavioral Health Degrees Act.
Okay, I will get back with you. Thanks
Great.
for the question.
Thank you.
So I will go next and just let you know that we have been advocating for a litter can along Riggs Road in the 100 block, close to the light at Riggs in First Place. As a part of our community cleanup, this past Saturday, we cleaned that area. It's very evident, it's a high loose litter area. It's very evident that there's a need for a trash can. It's very evident that when people are waiting for the light to change to cross the street to go to the subway, they're just tossing their things in the woods or along the sidewalk and no one's cleaning it. So it would be greatly appreciated if you could support that. I can forward you the 311 requests with an
great.
submitted. Okay.
All right.
Anyone else have a question or comment? No, it looks like Ms. Johnson has her hand back up. So let me make sure that that's a new question. Dial *9. There you go. Do you have a question, another question, or is that the old hand that was raised?
Oh, no, I do have another question for Ms. Barbara. This is Jocelyn Johnson. Ms. Barbara, I just want to make sure, well, first, I'm really glad to see that Ms. Councilmember George didn't disappoint as far as Whittier is concerned, but I brought up to you at the mini commission meeting, and I don't want her to forget the bathrooms. If hopefully she's going to deal with the upgrading and repairs needed for the police precinct. So the bathrooms not having sinks working is just disgusting. So I hope she doesn't miss that.
Nope, that information was actually forwarded to Will Perkins, so.
Right, but you didn't say it, so I just want to make sure it didn't die. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Is there anything in the chat, Commissioner Yates?
No, Chair Brooke.
All right. Well, I think you get off the hook easy this time.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you very much. So next on our agenda would be Mr. O'Leary, but I did not see him earlier. Nope, do not see him. So we will keep going. And if he is here, if he could just raise his hand and let me know, that would be greatly appreciated, but I don't see him right now. And so we'll get committee updates. We'll start with Housing Justice Committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Our last meeting in April was largely administrative. We next meet on Wednesday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. and have a great agenda in the works. We will be having reporter Morgan Baskin at the meeting to talk to us about her reporting on the DC Housing Authority rent strikes and the mayor's budget proposals. We'll also have a presentation and discussion about a proposed map amendment for 7709 Georgia Avenue Northwest. That's in 4B01 for a proposed 155 unit affordable assisted living community. And finally, we will have a presentation and discussion with Commissioner Swale Siddiqui in 3C05 about some work they have done regarding historic districts and how they impact their racial and demographic impact. So that should be great. Again, May 3rd at 7 p.m. and that information will be on the commission's website.
Wonderful. Vision Zero Committee, perhaps Commissioner Yates could update us since I accidentally missed the meeting.
Chair Brooks, you had other things to worry about. We last met on April 19th at 6 o'clock. We had a good discussion. Chris Laskowski, who is the committee director for the DDOT chair on Chris Laskowski, who is the committee director for the council committee on transportation and the environment, joined us to discuss Vision Zero in the upcoming budget. Wow, that was a mouthful. I'm glad I got through it. Sorry, it took me a couple tries. And we will be meeting again on May 17th at 6 p.m., but the agenda has not been set yet and will be posted on the website when it's available.
Thank you. And then Public Safety and Support Committee.
So thank you, Commissioner Brooks. The Community Safety and Support Committee last met on last Thursday, April 20th. And we had a presentation from the Department of Behavioral Health. Unfortunately, Dr. Bazaran was not able to attend, but Anthony Hall presented in her stead and did a great job of presenting information about all of the myriad services that they provide, several of which the committee members were not even aware of. So that was very informative. We also had a budget presentation from Ward 4 Mocher, Sophia Tacola, discussing public safety, budget priorities from Councilmember Louis George's office. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 18th from 7 until 8:30. That will be a 100% virtual meeting. And we hope to have a presentation from members of MPD to discuss several bills that came forward, but one in particular from Councilmember Gray regarding officer retention and obtainment. So more information about that once the agenda is finalized will be presented and of course disseminated to the public 1 week prior to the meeting. So save the date for May 18th at 7:30. Excuse me.
Great. Thank you. So I just finished promoting, I believe, everyone for Dr. Louis Farabee, Chancellor of the DC Public Schools, who's here to present for the mayor's FY24 budget proposal. We'll have a 20-minute presentation and a 10-minute discussion. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Brooks. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening, and good evening to all commissioners. As a fellow Ward 4 resident, it's great to hear the conversation this evening. I also do want to recognize the call for volunteers as students are preparing for park testing. I do think that's an important gesture and an encouragement to our students during this critical time. As mentioned by the representative from Councilman Louis George office, the mayor's proposed budget is now with council, and I think so it's important from a process perspective to share where we are in the budget process for the city. And that is the council now has the opportunity to respond to the mayor's proposal and to begin to discuss and present their priorities. And so one point of strategy at this point, I will call out to the group if there are things in the proposed budget that you are supportive of and affirming of. I think now is the time to make sure that that voice is heard. And then if there are concerns, also to share that as well with their council members, as the budget will be massaged by council members and then approved in its final form. So just want to start by sharing where we are in the process. The other important to note is that we are in tighter financial times as a city. I think the mayor's done a great job of highlighting that and giving us a plan of how to ensure that we continue to bring back downtown and recover. But revenue is not in the same place that we have been in the past. And there's some tough decisions to be made and some trade-offs to be made in the budgeting process. Similar to the mayor's overall budget proposal for the city, the same is true for DC Public Schools. But there are a couple of budget highlights I do want to give as we get started, but also just talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments in DC Public Schools and where we are. First, really proud that DC Public Schools is the only school district in the region to see an increase in enrollment since we've been back from the pandemic. We believe that represents strong confidence in what we offer to students and families. We're continuing to elevate what we call high impact tutoring. This is tutoring for students in small group settings or one-to-one setting to ensure that they're getting the appropriate academic supports, knowing that our students did lose some ground academically as a result of losing time with in-person instruction. We've served thus far over 3,600 students in high impact tutoring, and we did similar numbers last year. We've had overwhelming response for summer school. So we have a number of summer programs that we're offering to support students academically and also extracurricular activities for students over the summer. We're also in the process of a high school redesign with what we call DCXQ to ensure that we are reimagining the high school experience to give students a leg up for college and career. And we'll have 2 new high school models coming in this upcoming school year at Dunbar High School and at Cardozo as well. I do want to highlight, as a part of our budget, we made some very intentional decisions to ensure that we're able to attract and retain strong talent to our schools and our classroom. We're proud that we've reached historic agreements with the Washington Teachers Union and the Council of School Officers to recognize their work, their value, and the contributions, all receiving over 12% increase in salary and bonuses. And so we believe that this is a strategic effort to continue our path of progress. And we're also in the midst of doing some strategic planning, and we ask that, you know, communities continue to engage with us on our priorities. From a budget perspective, it's important to note that DC continues to invest historic number of dollars in our public schools. And this year, the number for public schools is $2 billion, which goes to what we call the Uniform Per Student Funding Formula, also known as the UPSFF. And that's, again, another historic number increase, a little over 5% for our public schools. We also know that schools are weathering the effects of the pandemic. And the mayor had committed to at least 2 years of additional recovery dollars in schools. So that is an additional $11 million to go to schools. And then we're very much so focused on preventive maintenance, especially around our heating and cooling systems. We have an investment of $14 million in that area as well. Specifically, the 5% increase that goes to DCPS will provide an additional $145 million in foundational dollars of support to schools. And we're also seeing that many of our schools are growing in enrollment, resulting in additional dollars for students and families for resources and supports. We also, in a tight budget, had to make some decisions about one-time funding as a part of the recovery dollars, federal dollars we receive. And we made an important decision to continue our equity imperative and to allocate additional dollars for students who have greater needs. And that resulted in an additional $11 million to students who are identified at risk or receiving special education services or language learners, because we know, again, many of those students need additional resources. As a result, we did transition in a step down of federal resources. So with federal resources that are one time, schools at a minimum will have at least 95% of what they had the year before. We really wanted to be at 100% of what they had the year before, which is what we did in the previous fiscal year. But we believe that it's important to start the step down process, as next year will be the last year that we'll have access to the one-time federal dollars. The mayor's budget also includes additional dollars for apprenticeships, additional dollars for after-school programming, which we've heard from constituents is a priority. And then in our budget, we have a 5-year capital plan that is $2.71 billion, which includes our work around modernizations and also our small capital projects. And I mentioned earlier the preventative work on HVAC systems. I do also want to call out, as part of that, there's a focus on safety. So there's $6 million in the small capital budgets to strengthen safety for schools, which is door locking systems, electric access controls for entry, cameras. We just want to be sure that every aspect of our schools are being modernized appropriately to ensure that we have safe campuses. We're continuing to do work around our infrastructure and technology to ensure that students and staff have access to in-cycle devices, high quality internet. And then we are implementing a phased approach to update what we call smart boards, which is technology that educators use in the classroom to present content, and also to do a number of different video, other interface with students throughout the day in the classroom. So this is an overview of some of the work that we're doing with budget. I do want to highlight that this is an important time of the year for enrollment, which is our source of students and dollars. And so we encourage everyone, if they haven't, to re-enroll, to start that process. And then families that have applied through the My School DC lottery have been matched. May 1st is the deadline to accept those seats. If there's still information you would like to have about our schools, I want to encourage everyone to take advantage of this Saturday. This Saturday is Enrollment Saturday, and so there'll be opportunities for families and the community to engage with our schools all across the district, particularly in Ward 4. I know that there are many ways in which the community can be engaged. We'll continue to look at our facilities. I know that's been a concern in this particular sector of Ward 4, specifically with Whittier, LaSalle Bacchus, Tacoma, Ottabee Wells, and Coolidge. We've been working to ensure that we can identify additional cafeteria space at Coolidge, because at Coolidge and Ottabee Wells, the sharing of cafeteria space has become a challenge. And then we're continuing to work on the work orders for schools as relates to their facility, and create a path, hopefully soon, that ensure that we are able to deliver on our on-time modernization for Whittier. So I want to use all of my time there, or stop there, and hopefully you have a overview of the budget, the mayor's recovery plan, and specifically where we are budget-wise as relates to schools in your area 4B. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to entertain questions or comments you have for me at this time.
Commissioners, any questions? Please use the raise your hand. Commissioner Yates.
Thank you for joining us, Chancellor Farabee. I wanted to start by asking about the school budget up here in Tacoma. Tacoma Elementary is projected to have an enrollment increase. It's a Title I school, a high need school. It's actually it's actually got more students enrolled right now than what you project as the enrollment for next year, even with an increase, yet they took a substantial budget cut. And I want to talk about how, if enrollment is what drives dollars, and what at-risk needs are what drive dollars, why that school community needs a budget cut.
Yeah, there are a couple reasons why that can happen. That there's an increase in enrollment, or there's a high needs to the population in the building. One of which is prominent this year, and that is what I mentioned earlier about schools receiving one-time federal resources that were stepping down to a 95% level. And so that could very likely be in play there. And the second reason is if there's a change in student population. For example, there may be some self-contained classes for students receiving special education services. Those students transition to middle school, no longer in the building. Thus, those positions or resources associated with those students are in the building. But primarily this school year, what we see where schools are having an increase in enrollment and still have less dollars in the budget year over year is primarily related to the federal step down in resources, which is happening across the nation and in other agencies.
The real quick follow-up to that, will any of that reach to central office? I note that Mary Levy says that DCPS central office staffing is at the highest it's been since 1981, when there were 94,000 kids in DCPS schools. Is there a chance for central office sharing in this cutback process?
Absolutely. So there have been a number of centralized support. So for example, we have what we call patient care technicians in the school. They've been in the buildings over the last 2 years and this school year to help with our COVID response. They help with screening any student that is symptomatic. We provided that resource because we wanted to ensure that our school leaders were having more space to deal with the challenges and teaching and learning of the day. Those positions will be phased out. We provided additional substitute support that is through the centralized budget will also be phased out. And there are
I
other,
want to just be clear that like I was asking about folks in central office who are not in student support roles, right? Like, and you're like, yes, we're cutting other student support roles as well. Like, are there cuts occurring in non-student support roles?
yes, any of the federal resources that were utilized for FTEs, all of those positions will be phased out, and there are central service positions and school-based positions. But again, I think it's also important to note that the vast majority of positions in our central services team are direct school support positions.
Okay. Commissioner Gilligan, you have a question?
Yes, echo the thanks for you coming and providing the overview and taking our questions. I just wanted to follow up on the $14 million for preventative maintenance that you mentioned for HVAC systems in schools. Wondering if you've accounted the total deferred maintenance that is needed and how much this chips away at that for this year, and also just to get a little insight into kind of what is the preventative maintenance addressing. I just think of the 6-week or so period of time that it takes to transition the schools over from heating to cooling and back again. And I'm wondering if this preventative maintenance is a way to shorten that time period where schools are not sure what the temperature is going to be when they're going in during this period of the seasonal change.
Yeah, I don't know if it will impact that timeline much, as that is just the time it takes across the district for government facilities to be phased over from one system to the other. When we do have opportunity to modernize buildings and our HVAC system, that allows us to have more remote control of those systems, which allows us to make those transitions quicker. But the idea with the preventative maintenance is to do regular, for example, as you would do in your home, filter changes, regular maintenance to systems to ensure that they're functional longer and that we prevent additional costs associated with repairs that may need to happen down the road. We do carefully monitor the deferred maintenance, as you referenced, with Department of General Services. And we have been putting money in the budget over the past few years to continue to elevate our preventive maintenance. I think there'll still be more work to do, but it's something that we've been trying to attack from a phased approach over time.
Okay, thank you. And I just
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had another.
Yeah, sorry. One more question. I understand that with respect to lead service line replacement, we'll be voting on a resolution later tonight. And in that resolution, we do note that in the FY24 budget proposal, there's been a zeroing out of funds for the lead service line replacement. I'm wondering if you're able to comment on the executive's plan for lead service line replacement generally.
Yeah, I'm not in the details in order to be able to respond. That may be something that Department of General Services can come back to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I just wanted to also mention that while obviously Chancellor Farabee is well-versed in the budget for the school system, he also is here to talk about the Ward 4 budget more broadly. So if there's something else that you have a question about, if he doesn't have an answer, I'm sure he'd be able to get back to us. So I don't want you to think you're limited in scope in terms of your questions. Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you, Chair Brooks, and thank you, Chancellor Farabee, for speaking with us tonight about the budget and some of the investments in schools. I wanted to raise the issue of housing and funding to address chronic homelessness and affordable housing. Am I frozen?
Yep.
You're not. Yeah, you are frozen now.
But we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Am I frozen? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can. Okay. Everything froze on my end, so apologies. I wanted to ask about funding to end chronic homelessness and for affordable housing. And I think overall there are some pretty dramatic cuts in these efforts, including modest funding for emergency rental assistance, which has already run out 6 months into the current year, the failure to fund new vouchers for individuals and families experiencing homelessness, a dramatic reduction in funding for the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is one of our primary affordable housing tools, and the failure to add local funding for vouchers through the local rent supplement program. And I'm just wondering if you can give a general sense of the mayor's housing priorities, and maybe views on how we can make up some of the difference. I'll also share in the chat the resolutions the commission has passed related to these issues and in support of greater funding.
Yeah, I know this has been a priority for Mayor, and as you highlighted, the trust fund has been a great way to expand affordable housing and expand units across the city for residents. As I started with earlier, believe a lot of what we see in terms of reductions in key areas, just a reflection of where we are financially and what the revenue forecast dictated for the city in terms of the budget, but we'll certainly take that feedback back to the mayor as relates to your concern about access to resources for affordable housing.
All right, Commissioner Johnson.
I mean, my question's related to the mayor's proposed funding for the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. One of the Community Safety and Support Committee members, Allison Horn, raised this issue at last Thursday's meeting. There seems to be a $5 million decrease in the mayor's budget, specifically related to the Pathways, Violence Interruption, Leadership Academy, Family and Survivor Support, and Restorative Justice programs. Is there a rationale for why that $5 million was cut? And if you cannot provide that information tonight, if you could follow up or point me to the person who can answer that question, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we're happy to point you into the person that can give additional feedback. As I stated earlier, I think all of the agency budgets are going to be tighter this year as a result of a tighter budget. And so tough decisions had to be made about priorities that we could fund. And unfortunately, in a lot of areas, we were not able to fund resources and strategy at the same level as it was in the previous fiscal year.
I just think it concerning that in a time where we're seeing federal interference already with the way in which we're handling crime in our communities, the lack of our ability to handle our own forensic processing, that now is not the time to start decreasing funding for programs that are specifically geared towards preventing crime before it occurs, proactively versus reactively. But thank you for that. I look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you. Duly noted on the proactive approach.
Okay, are there any other commissioner comments? Okay, Commissioner, yes?
I'll ask one more if no one else wants to go. That's okay with you, Chair Brooks.
It's okay, go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the mayor's, this is the schools related, but also a DDOT question. The mayor is sweeping funds from new traffic cameras into the general fund rather than dedicating them to Vision Zero as required by council law. And this includes the funding for specific safety improvements around schools through legislation that our council member was integral in getting passed. And so there'll be only $10 million for Vision Zero improvements citywide. How do we ensure that children are safely able to walk and bike to their neighborhood community schools with reductions in funding for, like, we saw pretty horrible incidents last year, right, outside of several schools, right, Turner and then Kip down in Southeast, right? How do we ensure that kids can get to and from school safely when we're not funding those efforts?
Yeah, I think when we first get back into the swing of school and students were walking to and from school, we saw that drivers were not as aware of young people transitioning as they needed to be. And as a result, We did elevate our monitoring and support from MPD and also our crossing guards, and deepen our work with safe passage to ensure that students could get to school safely. That is work that we'll continue to do and continue to assess, where there are problem areas. We'll rely on residents as well to help us identify. One which is in 4B that I personally have been working with DDOT on is the transitions around Otterby Wells, Coolidge, and Whittier, which have been problematic at times, and it's something that we continue to monitor to ensure that there's safe transitions for students, as there's several campuses transitioning in the area. And that's work that will continue throughout the city. But as my understanding is, the camera dollars are utilized as a resource to help us balance our budget.
All right, thank you. We do have a hand raised from Commissioner Joy Pinckney, so I'm going to elevate her now. Ms. Pinckney, Commissioner Pinckney, I'm sorry about that. How are you this evening? You're on mute, Commissioner.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Let's see. Let me let you see who I am. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to come. I just have a question of Chancellor Farabee. In terms of schools and in terms of budgets, it is my understanding that schools have pretty much eliminated counselors in our school buildings. And, dealing with crime, I'm in the neighborhood, I'm over on Kennedy Street, but you can't just combat crime with policing. You have to combat crime at source. All the crime is a symptom of the real problem. And now that we're in a space where mental illness is prevalent, or let's say people are having a problem processing what's going on in the world, and our children need guidance as they encounter the world. So with that being said, are there any plans or dollars to increase the number of counselors that can interact with our children in the school system, even if it's not one per school, which it really should be, but maybe they can go on a rotation or something, because that could greatly benefit the future of our communities. So I'll leave it there and wait for your answer.
Yes, totally agree that counselors and social workers have been vital to the response of some of the trauma we received in our buildings as a result of, recovering from the pandemic and other challenges in our community. There is no effort to scale down the number of counselors or mental health professionals in our schools. Actually, we've been working to increase those numbers. What we have been challenged with, though, is the dearth and the shrinking numbers of individuals who have that licensure. So we have been working with our local universities to provide certification programs and the credentials for school counseling and also school social workers, so we can build a bench of people who worked in DCPS and who are interested in those roles. But we have worked to ensure that those individuals are represented in all our schools across DCPS, and we work to ensure that there's also a reasonable ratio as well of students to counselors or social workers, so students can receive services and counseling as needed. We've also elevated our college and career counseling. So there is dedicated support for students in helping them navigate their next step after graduation as well.
Okay, well, you do know that by that time of their development, it's pretty much too late to change minds, frame minds, etc. So the counseling and
there's counseling at all levels. So I was just highlighting the work that we've added to high schools, but there are counselors, social workers at the elementary, middle, and high school levels.
Okay. All
All
right.
right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. All right, so I don't see any other hands raised. Are there any questions in the chat?
There is one question. Kimberly Harrington says she wants to follow up on the question about central office staff. It seemed like Chancellor Farabee didn't fully respond to how I understood the question. How many office-based central office staff positions are being eliminated? Not due to federal money decrease, not new positions that were created due to COVID, but central office staff who work on policy or planning or other, in my opinion, non-essential tasks. Schools with increased enrollment like Tacoma are going to be serving more students with less staff and resources.
Yeah, again, happy to share more. The example I was given is that we significantly increase in FTEs, both centrally and in schools throughout the pandemic as a result of one-time resources that we receive. That level has been at an all-time high in the last 2 years, and next year will be our last year of those resources in our schools. And there will be a phase down of those resources both at schools and centrally. It's important to note, even prior to the pandemic, there's been reductions in central services without any impact to schools. So for example, in preparing for fiscal year 20, for example, prior to the pandemic, there was a significant reduction to central services and a reduction in force in a number of different divisions while we increase the level of funding in schools as well. We always start with our resources to schools before we consider any central service supports.
Chair Brooks, there's another question.
Go ahead.
I would just editorialize that at Tacoma, they're eliminating 3 instructional coach positions, which to me don't sound like COVID funded positions or specific COVID response positions, but this person who's anonymous says, to clarify about the dearth of mental health professionals, it's not a decrease in licensed mental health professionals. There's a nationwide and DC-wide decrease in licensed mental health professionals who want to work in person or school or DC government. Creating new counselors and social workers several years from now is good, but doesn't do anything to increase the number of counselors and social workers available right now for mental health support.
Yeah, so there's two points there that I want to respond to. So one, nationally, there's no secret there are less licensed social workers and school counselors in schools in general. Now, I do agree that there has been more interest in the individuals who hold those licenses in working remotely versus in person. And I think it's a decision that we've been grappling with of like, how do we respond to that? Are there spaces in which those individuals could potentially work remotely? I think it's something that we should continue to explore. For example, I was at Coolidge a couple weeks ago and student had an ear infection and we did a telemedicine visit with a health provider in the nurse's office. We're able to get the medication, able to do everything there without the parent needing to come to the school, and got the prescription, and child will be treated quickly. I think there's a way in which we could do similar work potentially with what our mental health professionals do remotely as well. But I think just having remote work solution is just one of several strategies need to be in play to ensure that our students are served well. And I also think that there are certain elements of mental health supports that need to be provided in person, and some obviously can be provided remotely.
Okay, so we have used now our 20 minutes for presentation and our 10 minutes for discussion. Commissioner Cohen, since your hand's up, we'll let this be the last question of the evening.
Yeah, I was just curious if DCPS has considered looking at the service, I guess what's called the service credit cap, to try to bring in counselors, teachers, educators from other jurisdictions. It's my understanding that there's a cap in terms of being able to pull educators in from other counties and locations, and that's sort of a bar in terms of hiring more senior level folks. And I don't know if that's been explored or if that's been considered, but if not, it's a recommendation that I've heard from some folks in our area who work in other jurisdictions, school jurisdictions, who live in the district, who would like to work in the district, and some of these jobs that you're mentioning that are hard to fill, but are sort of capped at that 10 years or 9 years of service with DCPS, and so it's not economically feasible for them to come into the city.
So I'm not familiar with a cap that prevents people from other jurisdictions working in DCPS.
Well, no, I think it caps the amount of time, their credit that they've earned in other school systems.
Got it. Right. So you can earn only a certain amount of credit. Got you. That's a great question. I will have to explore that one a little bit more. That may be dictated by our collective bargaining agreement. It doesn't sound like that's a governmental policy. And all of our compensation and benefits are driven by our collective bargaining agreements. But Commissioner, thank you. I'll go back to our team and discuss that further to see if that's a barrier. But I don't hear often that people don't want to transition because they're capped in what they can earn, which is what sounds like what you're saying.
Right. I think it's earnings and retirement. I think it's like the full compensation and benefits package. If I worked for Montgomery County for 20 years or Prince George's County for 20 years, and I'm a district resident and I want to work for DCPS will only give me 10 years of credit towards
retirement,
towards retirement, towards the grade and step and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I want to say I'm 90% sure that is dictated by the collective bargaining agreement, but I will confirm that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and we appreciate your coming.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Same to you. Okay, next on our agenda, we have two more presentations. Well, three more presentations actually. And so at this point, we'd like to, I think, move to Amanda Zander from the Public Outreach Coordinator and Private Space Implementation Manager for DC Clean Rivers Project for DC Water and Sewer Authority regarding the Rock Creek Green Infrastructure Project B. So let me find Amanda on our list. And Commissioner Yates, you'll take down the other presenters for me, right? Hi, Amanda.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering, could you also promote my colleague Eric Leinhardt? He's on the call as well.
You said Eric?
Eric, yeah, Leinhardt.
Oh, I see him. Well, I did see him, but now I don't. Did you promote him, Commissioner Yates? Because I don't see him suddenly, and I did.
He raised his hand, so he's at the top of the list.
Oh, thank you. He blinked. Done. There you go, Amanda.
Great, thank you. He's gonna go ahead and display a presentation for us. But yeah, thank you guys for having us. We will make this pretty brief. We are back to present to ANC 4B. We were here in February of 2022. We were actually introducing our green infrastructure project, Rock Creek Project B. So we're just here to give you a quick update on what we've done and what's still to come. And with that, I'll let Eric, who's the lead engineer on this project, take it over.
You're muted.
Yep.
Thank you very much. My apologies. Thank you, Amanda and commissioners, for inviting us back. Last time we met, we presented to the ANC proposal to install 4 permeable alley segments in 3 alleys and 2 bioretentions within your commission. And those have been successfully installed and are functioning the way that we were hoping to. We've been monitoring those, maintaining those, and we're receiving the CSO benefit we were hoping to achieve from that. we are proud to announce that we are ahead of schedule and under budget on this project. So that allows us to install additional green infrastructure within the district under this Rock Creek Project B. If you may remember, we have two other projects after Rock Creek Project B. We have Rock Creek Project C, where we're expected to manage another 25 acres of impervious cover. And then Rock Creek Project D, which is also an additional 25 acres. Those projects would take place for construction in 2025 and then in 2027. Since we are ahead of schedule with Rock Creek Project B, and we have additional money available to us during this project, we are looking at advancing some of those additional acres that we wouldn't have to build then in Rock Creek Project C or in D. So we've identified 5 additional permeable alley segments in 3 alleyways just south of Peabody Street between 7th and 4th. Which are shown in the map here. They are currently in the planning stages, and we're hoping that these would be permitted in the next couple of weeks and added to our construction. This would account for an additional 2.5 acres on our program, which is exciting for DC Water, exciting for me. But also we started some outreach in this area. I've met with some of the residents on these alleys who are very excited to hear that green infrastructure would be coming to help with localized flooding. We've informed them to reach out to their commissioners to show support for DC Water and our program. So hopefully they've reached out to you. But these are the locations that we're looking at doing. Just with any of our other green infrastructure projects in your ward, we would do public outreach. Each of the residents who would be receiving green infrastructure behind their homes would get a letter from DC Water explaining what the process is, and any assistance for parking, trash collection, accessibility needs, we would identify during that time and assist those residents once construction begins. We have also been doing suspending street sweeping during the construction time to allow for additional parking during construction, where access to people's backyards and parking pads would be limited. Let's see, next page. So if you haven't seen one of our green alleys, this is what some of our green alleys look like throughout the district. We use permeable pavers and a combination of concrete to slow down that water so we can get the right percolation into that alleyway. And then you see these little manhole covers. Those are access covers for us to make sure that the facility is properly filling and draining. Also in your ward, we're not proposing any additional bioretentions, but we do have 2 bioretentions just south of Van Buren on 6th. The plants have been put in, so hopefully the spring rain will allow them to start blossoming and flourishing in the bioretentions. We do come out once a month to inspect the bioretentions, as well as our alleyways that we construct. We do this in perpetuity. It's part of our consent order with EPA and DOEE. So we do monthly trash removal, leaves, weeds, sediment removal. Unfortunately, some of our bioretentions, people like to take their bagged pet waste and throw them in. We'll pick that up and throw that away. And then depending on how well the plants are doing, we may need to water it if we haven't seen rain in a while, inspect the plants for diseases, and just make sure it looks good. And then for the permeable pavement, we do vacuum sweeping on a quarterly basis. And if it's needed on a more regular basis, we will come out more regularly to sweep the alleyways. And again, we ensure that weeds and sediment are not within those joints where we're expecting that permeability for the water to get into the storage lane. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda before we take questions to talk about our downspout disconnect program. Amanda?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a program that we have. We've had it since 2017. It's a voluntary and free program where we will evaluate your home and look at your downspouts to see if they can be disconnected, and then provide a rain barrel as well if you're eligible. So if anyone's interested, we've got a lot of information on our website, some videos about exactly what we do. It's just another way to help the district's riverways. And yeah, with that, we can take any questions. All of our contact information you can find here if you need to reach out to us. Thank you again for your time.
And we do have a dedicated project hotline. So if you have a specific question or one of your residents have a specific question for the RCD project, they're more than welcome to call that hotline. And with that, I'll take questions. I'll ask the commissioners to field those for us.
Sure. So I don't know whose hand went up first, so I'm just going with who I see in order. So we'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
So I have two quick questions that I would be remiss from my constituents if I didn't ask. The first is, what was the criteria for the alleyways that were chosen for this infrastructure project? And then the second question is, if during the course of the month we see that there's additional trash that needs to be picked up on those lovely little pathways. I forgot just a few minutes ago what you just said they were called, that needs maintenance. Who should we call? Should we call you? Use the hotline? What should we do?
Sure. So I'll take both questions real quick. So the criteria is, I wish it was simple, but it sometimes it's not. It's really about the amount of water that the contributing drainage area creates, and that sends down the alleyway. So even though an alley may look really large and long, that the contributing drainage area, how much rainwater actually falls on the sewer shed that drains down that alleyway, may be small. So the first thing is that we look for at least 0.3 acres of drainage at a minimum for the alley to be considered. So a lot of the alleys fall underneath that minimum criteria. The other thing that we look for is utilities, overhead and underground utilities. There are a lot of underground utilities, specifically street lights or alley lights within an alleyway. If those utilities stay on one side of the alleyway and doesn't zigzag or cross the alleyway, we usually are able to navigate our facility around those utilities. However, if there's a lot of utilities that cross the alleyway, it is sometimes harder for us to build the facility. We are also cognizant of trees. We have a lot of very large mature trees in the area. Although they're private, even though they're private trees, this is my cat. Even though they're private trees, we are concerned about the root zone, the critical root zone, as well as the structural root zone of those trees. So if there are trees in the area, we try to avoid that as well. And then lastly, we don't like to build our facilities up against a building. So you see in this photograph here on the left, this is an old alley that we put in 2018 that is up against a building. We no longer build our alleyways against buildings or homes, just because there's a concern of water infiltration between where the alley meets the building and water coming down the face of the building and getting trapped between the two faces. So we're cautious about location as well. I think your second question, I think I forgot what it was. Do you mind?
Eric, I'm happy to answer that one, Eric. So
sure.
About trash and maintenance.
Oh, yes.
Totally reach out to that email address, the cleanriversgi@dcwater.com. You'll get a hold of me, and I can respond. I will note that other entities in the district have bioretentions and green alleys as well. So DDOT has a lot of bioretention. So sometimes we get requests for cleaning something or maintaining something that actually is our project. However, it's really easy for me to determine if it's our project, usually figure out whose project it is and give you that information. So feel free to reach out.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure. The other thing on maintenance, I'm sorry to interrupt, is in the the top of this screen that I'm showing you are signs that each of our facilities will have that will have an identification number as well as the phone number of our command center. So after construction is completely over and the hotline will close down, each of the facilities will have this tag with a unique identifier and a specific phone number for residents to call.
Great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Let's go to Commissioner Yates.
Yes, I wanted to, thanks for coming. First of all, I wanted to ask about the downspout disconnect program and if you offered a similar program for multifamily or condo buildings, or if there was any plan to.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So our DC water program is only for individual residences. However, DOE has a River Smart Rewards program, and they are able to work with other bigger buildings, multi-unit buildings. So that would be the best place to reach out, is to that River Smart Rewards.
All right, great. Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you. This is a great presentation and I really enjoyed it the last time as well. I live pretty close to the bioretention you put in at Van Buren and 6th, and it looks great. I'm wondering if there are any additional criteria that are specific to the bioretentions as opposed to the alleyways. And also wondering on a broader level, you can probably tell that we love these facilities as a general matter, how we can advocate to support more of these and expansion of your programming.
Sure. So the criteria for the bioretentions is similar, right? It's about the contributing drainage area and the amount of water that it gets to the bioretention. The bioretention holds less than 10 liter, while an alleyway holds a half liter to an acre of water. So the bioretentions are only placed in areas where there's not a high flooding incident, typically, and will shave off the first part of the peak of the storm. Bioretentions are 3 times as expensive as an alleyway is on a volume-based capture. So DC Water is re-looking at the type of bioretentions we'll be installing in the future. These bioretentions, as you can tell, have really nice fences and a lot of concrete and a lot of rebar. And the amount of volume we capture is minimal compared to an alleyway. So we are looking at, in RCC and RCD, we're looking at more open space bioretention, more park-like settings. If you're familiar with the 2nd Street Park or the 3rd Street Park on Kansas, doing more projects like that, maybe not as large of a art installation or hardscape installation, but more natural step pools and rain garden installations, rather than these very boxy, deep bioretentions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gilligan.
Hey, thank you for taking my question. I love hearing when things are under budget and ahead of schedule. So kudos to you. And I just wanted to ask if there was anything unique that you are applying to your project practices that maybe we could learn from and think about other DC programs, and just look through that lens of what works, if there's anything that stands out to you.
In terms of why we became under budget and
yeah, that's right,
and ahead of schedule. Sure. So the first was that the contractor that we chose, Fort Myer Construction Company, installed our Potomac River Project A green infrastructure program in 2018. So we had the same contractor, the same designer, the same CM team. And that combination was a really big winner for us, just because there were a lot of lessons learned. The crews that were installing these knew what they were doing when they got back on the site. So their production rates that they assumed were going to be similar to what they saw in PRA was a lot more efficient. We also, as designers, watched how construction was happening and worked with modifying some of our designs to accommodate a faster installation. So that was one of the keys to this. In terms of under budget, we go through a very extensive risk register at the beginning of each job. What could go wrong? What are our major concerns that could happen? And we put a budget against that number. And that is with every Clean Rivers program at DC Water. And so we put that contingent amount of money aside, and we go to our board early and say, we want to put this much money aside in contingent funding for this reason. This allows us to weather any storm. But at the end of the job, if there's money left over, it allows us to build more without having to go back to our board. Anytime we have to go back to our board, even for $5, it is literally an act of Congress. So we ensure that we properly fund our projects, as well as for contingent things that could go wrong, just so we can continue the program forward. So those are the biggest lessons learned, actually.
Helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Really appreciate the presentation. Just two quick questions, actually.
Sure.
The first is, are you measuring the effectiveness of the bioretention over time? So are you going back over time after they've been installed and seeing how effective they are in terms of filtration and doing what they're supposed to be doing? That's question one. The second question is related to, you mentioned pests earlier. We did a walk with Department of Health and their rodent vector team, and they mentioned that the bioretention tends to really attract rodents. Are you doing that in conjunction with Department of Health? Or are you doing the inspections and reporting it back to Department of Health? How does that work?
Sure. So we are monitoring, after each of our projects, we have a post-construction monitoring report that's due to EPA to show that what we planned on building, what we designed, is actually functioning the way it is. So we put level sensors in the bioretentions as well as our alley permeable pavements to ensure that they are filling at the right rate and draining at the correct rate. Because DC Water is a volume-based program, we are not a water quality-based program. We are not checking for if the uptake of nitrates or potassium or other water quality indicators are being filtered through the bioretention. Since we have to manage so many, prevent so much overflow in the CSO, volume is what we're looking for. So in terms of constituents and water quality, we're not monitoring that. Once we prove, or once we can show to EPA that they are functioning, we no longer have the monitors in there, but we are on a regular basis. We do have a team that goes out to each of the bioretentions and each of the alleys on a monthly basis, whether they are maintained by our maintenance crew or not, to ensure the functionality of them. We have not seen a rodent problem in our bioretentions. Our bioretentions are pretty small, and there's no locations for them to burrow. Honestly, our bioretention soil meter area is pretty shallow. We do see a rodent issue during construction in our alleyways. That's where most people keep their trash. So 2 weeks before construction of our alleys, we do put out rodent traps, bait traps ahead of our construction to ensure that they don't scatter into residents' homes. And they are left a few weeks after construction to ensure that any displaced rodents that attempt to come back, we try to keep that population low. We are not actively working with the health department, but if they did reach out to us because they saw one of our buyer attentions was a nesting ground of a rodent. We do have a program at DC Water to address those things, but there's no active communication that I'm aware of at this point.
Okay, well, thank you. I can't see because of the share screen right now. I'm not seeing the chat. Are there any questions in the chat?
No, Chair Brooks.
All right. Well, with that, we will move on.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, so we will move next to Ashley Wells regarding the DC Smart Street Lighting Project. She'll have a 10-minute presentation. We'll have a 5-minute discussion. And then I just want to, as a reminder, add that after that, there will be a library presentation because it's not on the agenda. So let's me add Ashley Wells. Hi, Ashley, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. Hello, I'll share my screen. All right, so my name is Ashley Wells. I'm here to present the DC Smart Street Lighting Project. I also have on the line with me my colleague, his name is Stanislaw Matthew. He'll be able to answer any questions you may have at the end of the presentation. So what we are doing with this project is we are going to modernize the streetlights in DC. We're upgrading over 72,000 streetlights and converting them to this LED technology. Along with the conversion of the streetlights to LED, we're going to add some remote monitoring capabilities. So on the back end, we'll be able to see if a light goes out and hopefully try to reduce some of those 311 calls and get to fix the light before they all start rolling in. With the LED technology, it's going to help increase the sustainability effort that DC is going for, and it reduces streetlight energy consumption, and it helps eliminate greenhouse gases. Also in Ward 7 and 8, we're going to include some access points over there. So our project timeline. Back in May 2022, the project got started, all the back-end work, prep work got going back then, and then Q1 this year, we're began the rehab work. So they're over, that's the prep work just to make sure the light poles are ready to get the new light bulbs. And then conversion work began Q2. So over in wards 5, 7, 8 are the first ones to get the conversion. So we are rolling over there. And then for asset management, that's just our maintenance phase. We continue all the way through 2037. We'll be responsible for making sure those lights stay up and running. So for our design and construction, as I said, wards 5, 7, 8 are the first group of wards to get the new lights, and then wards 2, 3, and 4, following up with wards 1 and 6. And the way this works is each ward is broken down into bundles, and then those bundles, we have 14 days to get in, do the conversion, and get out. So we should not be in any one area longer than 14 days. So as I said before, our asset management is the maintenance phase. So we're responsible for maintaining these lights all the way through 2037. So that should give us some nice long time consistency there. And we're doing our outreach and engagement. So right here, we are out here reaching out to you all, just letting the ANCs know what the project is and what to expect when we come to the area. So 45 days prior to the start of work, we'll be notifying the ANCs via email and mail. And then 7 days prior to the start, you'll start seeing the door hangers go out, any information cards just saying, hey, we're getting ready to be out there, and the emergency no parking will be coming. And then 72 hours, 3 days before we begin working, that's when you'll start to see those signs go up, just letting you know, like, hey, the street can't be used. So for contacting us, you can scan this QR code here. It'll take you all to the website, which is streetlights.dc.gov. And then if you all have any additional questions after this presentation and sitting at home and something comes to mind, you can email us at info@dcsmartstreetlights.com. And then we also have a press email, which is press@dcsmartstreetlights.com. And that is all. We are available for questions.
Is it possible for you to email us a copy of the presentation?
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Yates, you have a question?
Yeah. So this is in the former, when I was the commissioner for 4B01, there were some new LED streetlights installed in our community, and there were concerns about the color temperature of the lighting. I assume you maybe have heard that concern before. What have you done? What is the plan for color temperature for these new installations?
So, good evening, everyone. So I'm Stanislas Mathieu. I'm the project manager for this design and conversion phase. So we are under contract with DDOT. We are not DDOT, we are the contractor. So DDOT has been very, very specific about the color temperature for these new LEDs that we're gonna put in place. There are two different color temperature depending on the location of the lights, either that's a commercial area or residential one. These are the two color temperatures are 2700 Ks and 3000 Ks only. So I'm not aware of the previous issue that you faced in your location, but the contract is really very prescriptive. So hopefully DDOT took care of that.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Palmer.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering if the installation will involve any efforts to address like the double poles that we sometimes see. We get, as commissioners, a fair number of complaints about those. Will this have any impact on removing the extra poles?
So basically our contract is just retrofitting the existing lights. So we're not gonna remove any existing pole or adding new poles. We're gonna just retrofit the existing HID light up to LED lights.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Gilligan.
Thank you. I think you'd mentioned that we'll get notified 1 week before the installation. Is that correct?
So you would get some drawing gears for the location 7 days prior to the start of the works. Yes, specifically for the location where we will need to pull some ENPs, no parking signs, specifically, yeah.
Okay, I was just curious if you have the information for like the rollout plan for a specific area, like a full neighborhood, if that's information that you would be able to share in order for us to give heads up to our communities, like, hey, you know, this month or the next month.
So to answer your question, we do have a 2 weeks look ahead. So we may be able to share that through our website. Specifically, and you will know. So typically for the ANC 4B, as you understood, that will be part of the second group of wards. So that will happen, let's say, for the moment, the plan is to begin conversion and rehabilitation works in your ANC, let's say in the end of the summer or just after the summer. Yeah.
Okay. And you said you were just retrofitting, so this doesn't involve any sort of consideration for upgrading for like public charging ports or anything like that?
Upgrading what? Sorry.
Like electric public access to electric charging ports for electric vehicles or electric anything like that. That is completely out of scope. You're just retrofitting the lighting of the existing poles.
Correct. That's not part of the scope of our contract currently. Yeah. So we are putting some nodes, exactly as Ashley mentioned. We're putting some communicating nodes on the top of each and every light so that we get the status of each and every light in real time. So that will diminish the number of 311 call, because we know every time that the light is out for any reason. And we will have the capabilities also to control the light remotely from the central software platform. So we will be able to dim the lights when needed, if there is any need to dim the light or switch them on, switch them off.
Okay, and my last question was about that monitoring and the 311. So if an issue happens and a resident contacts us to tell us or complain about it, what our answer is don't put a 311 request. You all are monitoring it and you will react automatically.
They can still put a 311 request, yes.
Okay.
But with this improved streetlight network, we will have the information potentially earlier than any 311 call. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I just thought one more question. So for the ones you've already installed, what are some of the common issues that you're seeing reported after installation in the other wards?
Well, let's say we started 2 weeks ago.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Even though the contract has been awarded in May last year, a
Fair
lot
enough.
of preparation works and everything. So
Okay.
we just started converting that 2 weeks ago. So we are facing traditional issues when we are in a ramp up phase, but nothing specific to mention for the moment. And specifically for the LEDs, the lifetime of these products is really very huge. That's more than 70,000 hours, so meaning 17 years or 20 years lifetime. So for the moment, everything is going well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. We have one question. Commissioner Pinckney, I will promote you.
Hi, yes, good evening. Thank you for this presentation. And the first question was speaking on pretty much the brightness of the lights, the different glow from the lights. My question is, well, because I'm on Kennedy Street proper, but there are a lot of people who are on main streets where the street lights are outside of our windows, etc. So, and halogen lights tend to shine brighter than regular incandescent lighting. So is there a provision to allow the lights to shine on the street without disturbing those of us who have windows on the street with getting that extra light into our windows or our homes?
So yes, specifically as per the design we made, depending on the type of the lights of the fixture, depending if that's a teardrop, the post top, or a cover head. But by design, we try to limit what we call the backup light. So the lights on the house side, having some shield based on the design. And for some type of luminaires where we were not able to design it like this, there is a possibility to add a shield. So meaning that after we're going to install as per the requirements from NEDOT, but just after installation, if you feel that it's really annoying you because that's too bright on your side, you can just ask through a 311 call to put a shield on, and that will be NEDOT's call to ask the asset management company to come and put a shield on this light. Yes.
Okay. Well, two. I'm a guest here tonight, and I'm on 4D commission. So I'll get you all's information from the chairman so that we can invite you to our commission to give this presentation, because it's wonderful. But the other thing is, I am a person, I have diabetic retinopathy and, astigmatism. So halogen lights, or the lights you're putting up, bother my eyes, whether I'm driving, because, you have those same light bulbs now that they're putting in cars. They get off great glare, especially if you're driving or you wear glasses. Almost, they disturb the eyes almost the same as dusk does, because the lighting, when the sun is going down, we're in dusk, it impacts the eyes differently. So how are you planning for the population that I serve, who are seniors, who may have eye difficulties? How do your new bulbs impact their ability to walk and see comfortably?
So I will take this question aside and come back to you, because we do have some specific requirements as per the glare, the lux level at the ground level, and everything like that, ASHTO standards and everything as per the contract. So we are following the contract. And I don't have any answer to your question for the moment. Sorry for that.
Yeah, I just know because I use my eyes a lot. And I know when working in the federal government, in the places where we have to constantly use our eyes, they have this type of lighting, but there's this type of lighting that is specifically made for seeing better, so it won't make your eyes tired or won't adversely impact your use. So I just thought I'd ask.
Well, thank you. All right, we're going to close out with Commissioner Cohen. And then after that, we'll move to the next presentation.
Thank you, Chair Brooks.
Mhm.
This question might be for Ms. Wells. I'm just trying to understand the cost associated with this. I didn't hear anything, any discussion around that, both in terms of implementing this is a new program as well as future maintenance. We had heard earlier from Chancellor Farabee that we're going into sort of this challenging economic environment. And so I just want to get a better understanding. How much more does this cost than the standard street light? What, does it cost more? What does future maintenance look like in terms of cost? Any just general details you can provide, I think would be helpful.
If I may, I will try to answer this question because I'm not sure Ashley has got the answer. So that's a P3 contract, meaning that we contracted with DOT for a 15 years contract, and we are funding this project. So meaning, and trying to answer your question, does that gonna cost more because of LEDs and the like in terms of maintenance? No. For sure that will cost less. Exactly as I mentioned, the lifetime of these lights are really that's a really long lifetime. That's 70,000 hours. So considering that you use the light roughly 4,000 hours a year, so look at that. That's almost 20 years lifetime. So the replacement, and secondly, because we put all those nodes, communication nodes on each and every light, meaning that we don't have to send teams around the street, across the street to check everything all the time, every time. So we will know exactly when there is a light out event, and we can dedicate the maintenance team to go to that location specifically to fix the issue. So that in terms of maintenance, that's really efficient. And the last is in terms of energy consumption. We are cut by 2 the energy bills for the city.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We will now move to the amended presentation and hear from DC Public Library. So I will promote Martha. And then good evening.
Hey, Commissioner, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Nice to see you all. Good connecting with a few of you at the Mayor Safety Summit a couple of months ago.
Yep.
So is the floor mine?
Yes, the floor is yours, but I just need to know who's going to share their screen.
I will.
Okay. Have at it. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me, folks, and thanks for having the library over. My goal for the next 10 minutes, hopefully, is just to give a little bit of background around the library's facilities master plan, specifically as it relates to the Shepherd Park Library and some of the service gaps that we identified in our facilities master plan, hoping that that might demystify a little bit of what the library is thinking about doing, and looking forward to any conversations or questions that you may have. So I will begin sharing my screen if that's okay.
That is okay.
Excellent. Do you see
a blueprint for change?
Perfect. Yep.
Yep.
I did this same presentation for 4D last week, and I thought this was actually a good start. I won't belabor it, but some historical context is pretty important here. Back in 2006, in an effort to vastly improve and update the district's library system, which was really old and moribund at the time, then Mayor Tony Williams commissioned the Blue Ribbon Task Force, who ultimately produced this report, A Blueprint for Change. It's a 400-page document. You could find it online. Pretty interesting for the time. the recommendations, I think, ultimately are focused on two things: modernizing or rebuilding every single neighborhood library in the DC public library system, and also building a state-of-the-art central library to address what was the woeful state of the MLK library downtown. So that was my predecessor's charge. I moved here from Brooklyn, New York in March of 2014. And when I was hired, this has been my charge as well. And it's been a great thrill to work on as many libraries as I have. And we're not complete with the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. We do still have two libraries from the original campus that are still unrenovated or rebuilt: the Chevy Chase Library and the Shepherd Park Library. Fast forward quickly, 14 years later, and the library has published another plan called Nex Libris. This is our facilities master plan, and this one was as the Blue Ribbon's recommendations were winding down. We were talking, what are the things that we need to do to think about how the campus is changing, how library usage is changing. And so this facilities master plan is focused on better maintenance of the library system, functional refreshes, basically how do you address kind of functional obsolescence as neighborhoods change, and then 3, how do you grow smartly and equitably. And so this plan was published in 2020 during the pandemic, and importantly, a lot of the research, all of the research, frankly, and data that informs this plan comes from 2018 or so pre-pandemic data on this plan. A major area of focus for residents has been the identification of 6 geographic areas where new library services could be introduced in the form of either new buildings or stronger outreach and engagement. And I should say these blue call-out boxes are verbatim call-outs from the 2020 plan itself. Obviously, Brightwood Park Manor Park is the neighborhood of interest to you all here. And then we've identified a number of other areas in the city that, again, could benefit from stronger outreach, buildings, depending on the further engagement that we did around each potential project. There are a couple important caveats in the facilities master plan, and I don't think that I have done a good enough job of conveying this, that the recommendations in the facilities master plan were really subject to these future neighborhood studies as well as community engagement to determine project feasibility. So those recommendations that are in the plan were not decisions to move forward, but rather just sort of a stake in the ground. This is the idea that we've got, and then we have to go in and dig a little bit deeper to see if there is an appetite to actually go through with it. And that's what we've been doing around Shepherd Park recently. I guess another caveat is this notion that the plan was not a commitment to any project by the library or the district. And we still, of course, need to engage council members, Mayor Bowser, and my bosses, the Library Board of Trustees, before any recommendations are implemented. The last caveat is really important, and I want to stop on this for a second. And this is that the plan was published in November of 2020 during the depths of the COVID outbreak. But again, it was largely completed prior to the COVID outbreak. And we state in the plan that we know that COVID may have some profound impact on city services and how libraries are being used, and perhaps would exacerbate some of the trends that we were seeing prior to the pandemic. And lo and behold, 3 years in, it certainly has. So this is just a snapshot of what I consider possibly the most important library metric in terms of buildings and how we get them supported and funded. And this is how many people are coming into the doors of our buildings. This is a quick comparison of FY19 and what I call post-vaccine, so FY22. So this red bar is not the libraries open in a hybrid state. This is not libraries open for curbside service. These are fully open libraries. So this is pretty much a apples to apples comparison, pre-pandemic and post-vaccine. Pre-pandemic, our branches had about 3.8 million visits. Fast forward to last fiscal year, we had just over 2 million people. So it's a pretty significant decline. You might say, well, that was 2022 post-vaccine, but still people are getting more comfortable. I'm sure things are changing and it's a sort of a parabola where we're moving up. But honestly, to this point, we're not seeing a dramatic increase from those FY22 numbers. They're pretty flat in some cases. I should say, big asterisk here, the MLK Central Library is separated from these stats. We wanted to really concentrate on our neighborhood libraries. The MLK Library happily has been attracting people far and wide, and there's a good story to tell there about attendance. But back to a more sort of a hot off the presses comparison, here is attendance in the first half of FY22 versus the first half of FY23. So this is very recent. This is the data that just, the quarter that just ended a few weeks ago, March 31st. And what you'll see is that from FY22 to FY23, there still was a bit of a decline in visits to the library. And that's despite the fact that we added 9 hours of service to most of our locations effective November of 2022. So, so something is going on, right? And again, some of what we talked about in the original facilities plan has just been exacerbated by the pandemic in terms of behavioral changes. What are we seeing? And we've got all sorts of data to back this up. A continued adoption of ebooks, and this is really all across the city, which is fascinating. Prior to the pandemic, you know, the ebooks were concentrated in areas where there was already high circulation of physical books. Now we're seeing ebooks more spread out across the city. The library certainly has been investing in a lot of online content. I hope that you guys are familiar with some of the great things like we offer, like Canopy, which is sort of Netflix for brainy people, and a bunch of other really cool things that that district residents love, and we're so happy to provide. We have been offering direct-to-home initiatives now for years, including the Books from Birth program. We are just on the tail end of wrapping up a 10,000 device initiative that we purchased with American Rescue Plan Act funds and partnered with agencies like the Department of Aging and Community Living and some other agencies to get these computers into the hands of residents. We know that residents were prioritizing ownership of technology during the pandemic. It was something that they just, you know, clearly if their kids are going to be online during school, they can't have something that is taking forever to boot up or something that's very antiquated. And then more immediately, we know remote work is having an impact on people visiting libraries, certainly virtual meetings like what we're having right now. The attendance at our libraries during the evenings has been dreadfully low. In fact, we are right now considering shifting our hours a little bit to the further to the morning in order to, I think, maybe pick up more folks who are more comfortable seeing us during the morning. And then lastly, this is something that we all hope is temporary, but we know is very real right now. And we hear this anecdotally, certainly when I go visit branches, is that there are personal safety concerns for a lot of residents who don't necessarily want to be out, not just going to the library, but doing a lot of things, especially after dark. So real quick, this is where we stand right now. This is a snapshot of DCPL funded capital projects. Many of these come as a result of the recommendations from the facilities master plan. We've got 5 expansion projects, including the Southeast Library in Ward 6, the Northwest 1 Library, the Deanwood Library, the Rosedale Library, and Parklands Turner Library in Congress Heights. All those libraries are going from like 5,000 square feet to something that we think is better for the services that we like to provide, which is closer to about 20,000 square feet. I only bring this up to say that These expansion projects will require probably north of 30 FTE to be added to the library's budget. And these are capital projects that are already funded again in the pipeline. The proposed FY24 budget eliminates roughly 20 of our FTE. So in the back of my mind, I'm seeing we might be in 3, 5, 7 years at a deficit of 50 FTE, which is not an enviable position to be in. So that's all really context, sort of a snapshot. Going back to the Shepherd Park Library, the recommendation was to see whether or not the Shepherd Park Library, if rather than being rebuilt on site, if we could move it south, could it possibly better serve those neighborhoods to the east, Brightwood Park, possibly Manor Park, and as well as the Shepherd Park Library. The feedback that we're getting is probably more, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought that there would be more unanimity around moving that library at least a little bit further south. That's why we've been talking about possibly relocating it to the parks at Walter Reed. But in all transparency, a lot of the feedback that we've gotten is that certainly there are people that support it, possibly a majority of people that support it, but I'm not seeing the sort of overwhelming support for that idea that I had been expecting, which is why we have done this engagement report. And I do believe that several of you participated in that report. So our concentration, I think, really has to go back to what needs to be done at Shepherd Park. And then your questions, or certainly the questions of 4D is like, well, what about Brightwood Park? What about Manor Park? And I would add to that list, what about, all those other neighborhoods that have been identified in the facilities plan as potentially requiring additional services. Also places like Ivy City or Navy Yard, which weren't even in our plan, which people have been talking to us about, hey, we need a library over here. In a way, it's a good problem to have. But at the end of the day, as a card-carrying librarian for almost 30 years, there's nothing more fulfilling for me than to work with communities on building libraries. But right now, I've got to contend with significantly decreased visits, a declining budget, and costs that are increasing even in the next, again, 3 to 5 years. So as I've committed to 4D and committed to the council member, we have increased some of our outreach activities to Brightwood Park. I think that's an important component of serving neighborhoods. I think that's the next master plan is looking at where we are in terms of usage and what does a service gap look like? The other day somebody talked about book deserts. I mean, what does it mean to be a book desert when the majority of our circulation now is through ebooks? There's a lot to contend with. Libraries are changing radically, and I hope that helps sort of at least give you all an idea of what we're thinking about. And maybe I'll stop there. And I apologize. I probably went longer than I should have.
Just a couple of minutes.
Should I stop sharing?
Yes, please. It would make it easier for me to see questions. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? We'll start with Commissioner Gilligan.
Hey, thank you for the overview. Very informative as we start thinking about this more. I had a question on the budget piece that you shared. Thanks for sharing that schedule out to, I think it was 2033, and this one is at the tail end of that. And I was just wondering, because I saw that the amount marked for this new library was just about the same as the ones currently being constructed. So the buying power is going down, right, with inflation. So I'm just curious, are you feeling like you're really being forced to scale back this library's, compared to what you're doing today? Like, what is the impact of that inflationary squeeze?
I mean, look, that's the elephant in the room right now. I'll give you an example. We begged the mayor for an additional $10 million for our Southeast Library renovation. That said, that renovation includes a tremendous amount of below grade work, which is always more expensive. But I am worried. I am hoping that, as maybe if there's at some point, if we peak with our inflationary costs, that things are going to come back down to where $20-25 million can fund a brand new library. If you guys have been to, our Southwest Library down by the waterfront, that's $18 million to do that. And that was like 2 weeks ago. Even closer to you guys, the Lamont Riggs Lillian Huff Library, that was about a $20 million project. And we can't buy that right now. So we will need to, more than likely, we will need to adjust our how much funding we will need based on what we have in our CIP right now. So right now in our CIP, to your point, we've got $25 million roughly per project. Hoping, because some of those projects are 2, 3, 4 years out, that things might calm down. But if we were on the hook for building any of those right now, it would probably be closer to 30.
And have you, just a quick follow-up along those lines of, you're not to be able to afford assuming no other changes, you won't be able to afford as big of a library, or maybe, I know you have some mobile libraries. Are considering different scales in terms of structure or scope of, and breaking it out that way differently? Just wondering what kind of considerations you've made there along those lines.
We're going to be updating our facilities master plan this year to account for some of what we've seen in COVID, and also maybe update some of our pricing. We've held firm that a library has got to be 20,000 square feet, if at all humanly possible, which is why we've got funding to replace the Parklands Turner, the Deanwood, Northwest One, Rosedale, those co-located libraries. There are no meeting spaces, there are no study rooms. The kids are on top of the teens, which is always a bad idea. They're noisy, there's no quiet. I mean, you can go on and on. There's no outdoor space. So we, at this point, have committed to not saying, okay, well, we'll be fine with 13,000 square feet. That goes against everything that we have said thus far since I've been here. Whether that could change based on if we see, let's say, a continued decrease of library visits, and we can possibly change the scope of what these libraries are intended to do. Maybe they're not intended to serve every age group, all ages and stages of life. Maybe they're there for a certain population. Possible we can get away with something less, but that's something that we have not, that's an important question, super important question, but we have not broached that yet.
Thank you.
Commissioner Colson.
Thank you. Good evening. I appreciate your presentation. I may have missed it, but if you did speak to it, expound on it. What is the rationale that the participation or the visits will increase with the change in location?
Are you speaking to specifically around Shepherd Park? If there had been an appetite for a move to Walter Reed?
Correct.
Generally, Commissioner, when you locate libraries near other busy retail operations, commercial hubs, you will invariably get greater participation in the library. This is something that I've known for years. This is actually something that cities all over the country look to do. In fact, this is why in some cases, sort of mixed use libraries with housing can be popular. You're looking for other activities that take place near the library. Supermarkets for me are the number one sort of ancillary component that will end up driving usage to the libraries. Greatest example I can give you, our Parklands Turner Library, if you're familiar with it on Alabama Avenue, it's like 4,900 square feet. Prior to the pandemic, it was one of our 7 or 8 largest, our most used libraries. And I absolutely associate that with the supermarket that was part of the same kind of strip mall over there. Similarly, the vending light, I mean, it's just, it happens over and over and over again. It's not a coincidence. You really are looking to place libraries in areas where people are going to go anyway, as opposed to having them in places where they have to be sort of a destination in and of themselves, if that answers your question.
So are you saying that library participation at locations like that are higher than Shepherd Park, Tacoma, Lamont, and other libraries around the city that are not near hotspots or popular attractions?
But I mean, there are exceptions, but by and large, that answer is yes. The Lamont Riggs Library has been doing very nicely. I mean, certainly anytime you rebuild a library and it's a beautiful new structure with outdoor space, that's always going to attract more people. Tacoma Park is another situation because it is it's a historic library. It's only about 9,000 square feet. It doesn't have the amenities that what we would consider a full-size library to have. The reason that we have not asked for funding to replace that is because it's a historic structure. But in general, yeah, I would say that is true, that generally you will have more participation in terms of visits, and that leads to more, study room bookings, more program attendance, that sort of thing, in areas where there are, it's more density, right? I mean, I think that's one of the great things about cities. If there's more density, if you're near public transportation, if there are other activities that can complement the library, then you've got a library that is serving more people.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned activities. I would propose that maybe you consider looking at the activities that are being brought into Shepherd Park and then doing a study from there. As a native and longtime supporter of MLK, which I actually absolutely loathe going to prior to the renovation, I would say that the uptick—
You and everyone else.
Yes, right. But the uptick in participation now is probably because it's a new facility. To your point, again, it is in a hotspot location, but also you guys have wonderful programming there. So I don't think that the programming should be just limited to downtown. Maybe look at considering the participation or the events and scattering those around the city, because maybe if you have great activities, the people will come no matter where the location is.
Thank you, Commissioner. I mean, I think that's great and it's aspirational for us. Some of the stuff that we're doing at MLK, like, bringing in a Colson Whitehead or Angela Davis or a whole host of people like that, you're going to need a space that can hold 300, 400, 500 people in the case of Angela Davis. And we've got 400,000 square feet of real estate downtown for a reason. But I think your point is well taken. And we are always trying to evaluate the programming that our staff are providing in the branches. And that is a component of success. I absolutely agree with you.
I'll say this one more thing, and then I'll defer to the other commissioners. And also parking. If there's parking, that will make a difference as well. So I hope that with the plan, wherever you all decide to move this library to,
we have not made any decision to move the library. But I know that for some neighborhoods, parking is a big deal. And I get the sense that parking is a big deal up there.
Always has been. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you so much. This was a great presentation. I just wanted to ask, you had made a comment that this plan was the next libraries is just a recommendation. It's what you quoted, stake in the ground to go deeper to understand feasibility. So I know you did the survey that came out. After that, what are the next steps to move forward in this process?
We're not done with some of the information that we are looking to get back, including some information from the Office of Planning around like walk sheds. How far does it take to get from one place to another? We are looking at what would it cost to try to modernize the existing Shepherd Park Library. And modernizations are not cheap. I think the last modernization that we did was the library in the Palisades, and that was like 2017. That cost about $8 million. So factor in inflation, it would probably be an 8-figure modernization to try and make that building really pop with energy and a whole host of other things. So we're going to compile a little bit more, Commissioner, at which point I basically, would confer with the library board of trustees, and then we would say, let's push ahead or let's scale back. And as I said, quite frankly, I haven't seen the overwhelming support that I was expecting to see prior to some of that engagement that was done.
Commissioner.
Sorry. I just wanted to, because I just saw something in the chat that was reminding me also, is DC Public Libraries, you're doing these studies on your own. Are there any vendors outside doing similar studies? Are you collaborating with outside entities to do these studies?
I mean, we hire contractors to do them, and we don't give them like, this is what we want to see from the studies. And certainly the original Next Libra plan was done with, a firm that is an expert in urban planning and land use and all these other things. So, I guess it's not independent because the library is paying for it. But if there's a sense that another study is needed, I don't think it will be right now. And especially, I mean, again, a lot of the data that we look at is data that the library itself produces. I mean, I think that's some of the stuff that I rely on the most. How much is the Wi-Fi being used? How are the rooms being booked? Or how are the computers being used? Why are they going down? Why are they going up? Circulation, first circ, how many times materials are renewed? Are there ebook users? Are they the same people that are borrowing books? I mean, that is, for me, is some of the most important data, and that can't be independent because that's proprietary data for the library. But in any event, I mean, I do think that we need to provide the community more of the information that we're collecting, and just continue to inculcate this notion that we've not made any decisions. And we've been on record saying that we would not make decisions without broad community support.
Okay, so I know that this is a hot button issue, which is why I've allowed us to go over time. But I also want to recognize that we still have resolutions that we have to vote on. So we have 3 more comments. Commissioner Palmer, then Yates, and then we'll hear from Commissioner Pinckney, who's in the impacted area in 4D.
Thank you. This has been a really informative presentation and discussion. And I think part of the challenge that we've had is that we seem to be having these conversations in little pinprick geographic points when what we're talking about is a little bit larger. And I just wanted to provide some context, at least speaking for myself, and I think what some of us discussed at our planning meeting in terms of a possible relocation to Walter Reed, and how, in my opinion, we have seen over time that the structure of Walter Reed is kind of enclosed. It's not as open to the community. It's designed almost to bring people in exclusively into that area. We've seen some shifts in terms of the Georgia Avenue frontage not being outward facing and being more inward facing. And so seeing the possible location more centrally located within Walter Reed, that was somewhat alarming to me in the sense that it seems much more closed off there. And I think just keeping that context in mind in terms of where there was discussion about a relocation might be helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, Commissioner Yates.
Thank you for coming out and spending a late evening with us.
Thank you for your service.
The first thing I would say is just I certainly am glad that the library has equity at the heart of this report and is looking to fill underserved areas and gaps in service. I think the one thing I would say is as we think about that and the Shepherd Park and Tacoma Park Library being side by side, to bring up your comment about it being a historic building that can't provide what we would consider a normal all ages space at the Tacoma Park Library, right? Like they're not a direct comparison, right? They can't sub in for each other. I've attended many a community meeting at the Shepherd Park Library. I've never attended one at the Tacoma Park Library for obvious reasons. And then just beyond that, I wanted to really quickly ask if the mayor's budget colloquially refers to this money for a library as a new 4A library. Do you view, like, is that in the budget as a mandate that the library be located within the political boundaries of 4A?
You know, and I don't know, this is probably my fault. I don't read, you know, I know that the mayor's budget folks like the plan, and I think they just lifted verbiage from the plan that the library is going to, you know, replace the Shepherd Park Library and serve communities to the south. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I don't think that those are legally binding summaries in the CIP. So from my perspective, and I believe that I'm correct here, the mayor doesn't have a dog in this fight. I know that she wants to finish what was started under Mayor Williams 15 years ago or so, and so she is in favor of a new or radically beautified Shepherd Park Library. The language that's in there about relocating was language that was presented to her from the library, and it made it into the CIP. But I don't believe that there is a mandate around that space. The only mandate that I'm hearing, largely from other neighbors, is that you can't move that Shepherd Park Library much further south and still serve the Shepherd Park Library. And that, in all fairness, was something that we wanted to look at. I had not heard that unequivocally years ago. So long answer to your short question, Commissioner. No, I think we've got the flexibility. If there were an appetite to do something crazy, I think we could do something crazy without having to go back to the city and say, hey, it says this, we actually want to do that.
Oh, okay, I appreciate that. I just thinking less crazy, but thinking of the parts of my district that are now Commissioner Colson's, where it's literally across the street from the Shepherd Park Library, but not in 4A.
Got it.
All right. Nope. Commissioner Cohen, I believe you already asked your question, didn't you? I think we were rounding out with Commissioner Evan Yates and then Commissioner Pinckney, because we've got to get on.
So,
Can you make
sorry,
can you make this quick?
Yeah. I just wanted to sort of go back to what Commissioner Gilligan said about the size of libraries, and I'd heard once that DCPL is no longer creating these sort of like neighborhood libraries, these smaller libraries, or possibly like children's libraries, things like that. I mean, are those things that DCPL would take into consideration if the community asked for, like if the community said, hey, we're not looking for a $25 million splash, but we want you to, take on this, vacant and blighted building that's historic and turn it into children's library or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the issues that we had with our small co-located libraries is that they were charged with doing everything that our other libraries were doing. Down the road, I'm absolutely more than willing to talk to people about, hey, we've got an idea of serving a specific population, returning citizens, children, seniors. I mean, this is something that we frankly haven't done. I think we would need to be very clear that this is not a traditional library, but rather doing something different. I think that's a great conversation to have, for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll end with Commissioner Pinckney, who I don't see anymore with her hand up.
We chatted last week.
Yep. Okay, well, her hand is down, so I don't know what that means. It was up before. Okay, here we go. Commissioner?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. I wasn't sure if when you put your hand down, that meant you didn't have a comment.
Well, I wasn't going to really do that separate from me just speaking to you guys.
Okay.
So you want me to ask the question first or make my statement? Or
Either
then just-
or, whatever you're most comfortable with in a minute or less.
Wow. Okay.
I'm joking.
Okay, well, you can put me on where I can see everybody.
You are. All you have to do is turn your camera on.
I did, girl. Okay,
We don't
let's-
see you.
I'm trying to be seen. I put on start video. Okay. Okay, there I am.
There you go.
And I hit okay. Oh,
We
now I
can
got-
see you. There you are.
Ooh, okay, I'm learning. Thank you. All right. Well, I just want to say hello, 4B. I'm trying to keep it as closed or as minimal. Hi, Director.
Hi again,
Are you
Commissioner.
last
How are you?
Fine.
I'm back for more.
I said, you know, I got a lot more to give you.
Oh, all right. I told you to call me. You haven't done that yet.
I sure haven't. I will.
Okay.
Okay, then we can go into those things. But I'm here today to speak to 4B. I want to say thank you for having me and inviting me. My name is Commissioner Joy Pinckney. I'm in 4D. My SMD is 4D01. I have almost 2,000 constituents in mine alone. And I don't know, you know, and I have 7 other partners in service, just as I am your partner in service. My concern with the library and how it's framing up, and the director knows, is that there hasn't been enough engagement of my constituents or the constituents in the areas, whether it's 4B, 4C, 4D. There are several others around who are directly impacted by the location and availability of services, to include a library, grocery store, a place to get medications, etc. It's not a reasonable idea to put a public space on private property. Because when you put a public space on private property, who is in charge of determining who can come, who can go, how long, who has meetings? You know, if somebody wants to come and they have an opposing view, or if they don't look the way you want them to look, etc. And that is not the 4th ward that I want to live in. And I can't sign off on that as a commissioner in good faith, representing my constituents or the people who live in the area where I live right now. I lived for years up on Lincoln Avenue and most recently Elder Street. So I know your area very well. I know the demographics of your area very well. I know the benefits that you all have at your disposal very well, of which we do not have most of what you have access to here. We do have a lot of returning citizens in our neighborhoods. We have a lot of children in our neighborhoods. We have a lot of elders in our neighborhoods with no public service in our neighborhoods at all. Now, libraries can be what we want them to be, but you know, our work is just about to start. So I'm in charge of the committee. I'm a subcommittee under the committee that looks at public spaces and their use. And so I'm here today to offer you all the opportunity to join with us as I invite the commission of 4C. I'm inviting you all as 4B. We will be there, and any other commission who would be in the area where a library can greatly impact what happens to their lives. I think it's very important that we all sit and have a meaningful conversation where we don't have to have other things on the agenda, because what this library means to our communities is it's just deeper than what the surface is implying. Libraries do not have to look like what they think they should look like. Libraries should service the communities that they're in. That's why we are really asking for the library to be located in near where we are. Because with one of your speakers tonight, one of you talked about the budget and how they had eliminated a lot of money in the budget for traffic calming, for access, and how hard it is for the children to walk down the street, cross the street, etc., to get to the services that they need. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any of those services that's within walking distance of anything. But I think if all of us look to service our communities and our constituents, we can come up with something that's workable for everybody and in the best interest of the people who live here. Unfortunately, we know that Walter Reed is a complex that is being designed for people that they anticipate inviting to DC. This has nothing to do with servicing the people who actually live here, have been paying their taxes, etc. And that is not reasonable because those people coming here is not guaranteed. The average condominium home on that property is more than $1 million. Who lives in DC can pay that? It's not to include the community. So our work has to start now by canvassing our communities, asking them to sign petitions for what they want. It's not about us, not really, but we really need to engage the public who would use these properties. We have ideas and we welcome your ideas. And I think collectively we can come up with ideas to include the director that could possibly work and serve our community and yours, you know, even if it means you all get a redesign of that beautiful library that's already up there. And then later on, you can get something else, or maybe they'll have money and build something greater over here. I don't know. But I think, you know, it would benefit us. So if you all would be amenable to meeting with us at a time we can invite you, or mutually acceptable time to talk about the library. And then if you want to do any resolutions or anything else in support of what your idea is about this, then that would be great.
I think that's absolutely appropriate. And I appreciate the invitation. I think after this presentation and after some of the conversation that we've had, I think that's a logical next step to involve all impacted parties and potentially even someone from the library so that we can come up with ideas that benefit everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
So with that, I'm about to lose a lot of my commissioners to Dreamland, and I have got some resolutions that we have to vote on.
Okay,
so I'm asking everyone.
Thank you.
We're gonna make it real fast, y'all. Come on, don't leave me now.
Commissioners.
Don't leave me now. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so on our consent calendar, we have two items. We have resolution 4B230401 calling for legislative or regulatory action to address collection of abandoned shopping carts. Commissioners Palmer, Gilligan, Brooks, Yates, and Huff. And then we have resolution 4B230402 providing support on the request for special exemptions for 5814 9th Street Northwest, BZA case number 20913, Commissioner Gilligan. So as you know, all of these resolutions have been posted to our website for community review. And with that presentation, I'm requesting a motion to approve vote on the consent calendar as presented. Y'all know after 10, I get a little loopy, so we got to get it in. Is there a motion?
I make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And can
Commissioner
I just
Huff?
ask, Chair, if we have all commissioners remaining present?
We do. 3,
Okay.
6, 9, 10. We have everybody. And I thought I saw all hands raised, but just to make sure, any opposition? No. Any abstentions? No. That's everyone. Okay, next on the agenda is resolution. Now I'm rushing. Y'all got me speed reading. Resolution 4B230403, calling on the district government to employ best practices for preventing sexual harassment in the workplace. Commissioners Palmer and Yates. Commissioner Palmer.
Yes, I will happily give some introductory remarks. This resolution proposes specific concrete improvements to the workplace sexual harassment procedures outlined in the Mayor's Order 2017-313. These recommendations are based in part on national best practices, as well as commissioners' professional experience working in the field of workplace misconduct. The recent sexual harassment complaints against the mayor's former chief of staff and deputy mayor revealed gaps in and problems with the current procedures outlined under the mayor's order, including failure to staff crucial sexual harassment officer positions to review and investigate complaints, failure to use an outside investigator to ensure neutrality, except in very limited circumstances, failure to define the scope of investigations when additional possible instances of misconduct are revealed during an investigation, and failure to assess systemic workplace issues that might have allowed or failed to prevent sexual harassment. Again, the resolution proposes specific concrete improvements to address these issues, as well as calls on the council to exercise diligent oversight to ensure the current mayor's order is implemented faithfully and that data from the recently approved Sexual Harassment Data Collection and Reporting Act of 2022 is used to inform the council's oversight and any changes to the mayor's policy. I don't know if Commissioner Yates has any introductory comments he would like to share, but that's what I have introducing the resolution.
Just to add my support and thank you, Commissioner Palmer, for letting me join her in this important resolution. It's focused on an extremely important topic within all workplaces, but also especially within the district government as a model employer for other large employers in our area, and tackles a topic that we've not only seen gaps in recently in recent news, but also has concrete mechanisms for improvement because of the existing mayor's order that can be revised by executive power without needing to deal with legal reform or law changes in order to get that done, or dependent on outside agencies interpreting the law a certain way. So this is a concrete resolution that can enable quick change that can make a real difference if followed, can enable quick change that can make a real difference in the lives of district workers.
Thank you. With that, is there a motion?
Oh,
Or actually, I'm sorry, before I ask for a motion, is there any discussion? Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, I do. I don't have an issue with the intent of this resolution. I am concerned about the narrowness of the term sexual harassment. I think this resolution should include harassment, including but not limited to sexual harassment. And so I would like to hear from others. I would like to move to replace the term sexual harassment in this resolution with the term harassment, including but not limited to sexual harassment.
Chair, I think you have to ask for a second before discussion.
No, actually, I have to ask for discussion before I ask for the motion. So at this point, Commissioner Palmer and Yates can decide whether to make changes to the resolution or move it as it currently exists.
So just to respond to Commissioner Cohen, the vast majority of the recommendations in this resolution are for Mayor's Order 27-313, which is entitled Sexual Harassment Policy, Guidance and Procedures. It's limited to sexual harassment policy because that is the existing policy in place that we are looking to reform or improve, right? And that policy is not deal with other incidences of discrimination or harassment, right? This is the structure that the mayor has set up to deal with these issues. I also think it's well and right to deal with sexual harassment separately. It is its own issue. It's a critical issue. It doesn't mean that I diminish any other types of her workplace harassment or discrimination, but I think that it's worthy of its own separate and special attention.
There's also nothing precluding someone from submitting a second resolution at another time to address a different issue. Commissioner Johnson.
I would just like to say I agree with Commissioner Palmer and Commissioner Yates regarding the narrow aspect of this particular resolution. As a DC government employee, I'm mandated to take that particular sexual harassment training on a yearly basis as a condition of continued employment based on the mayor's order. So I do feel that keeping this separated because of that mayoral order is important. But also to your point, Commissioner Brooks, I'd be happy to work with anyone, including Commissioner Cohen, on a resolution regarding discrimination in general. I believe Commissioner Cohen, you mentioned what is currently occurring with Councilmember Gray. I'd be happy to work with you on a resolution to that effect.
Okay. Given that feedback, is there a motion?
I'd like to move the resolution as written, if that's permissible.
Is there a
Chair.
second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think all opposed. All abstaining. Okay, so that's 9 in favor and 1 abstention, and it passes. All right, with that, we have one last resolution, and that is Resolution 4B230403, supporting and providing recommendations on B25-0195 Lead-Free DC Omnibus Amendment Act of 2023. Commissioners Gilligan and Palmer.
Thank you. Yes, this resolution makes note that the EPA and the CDC recognize that there is no known safe level of lead in a child's blood. At the greatest risk of lead exposures to infants, young children, pregnant women. It also notes that the EPA's lead and copper rule requires water utilities to monitor their networks for corrosion that could result in lead in drinking water. In the resolution, we cite previous ANC 4B statements on the issue of environmental racism and environmental justice from previous letters and resolutions. The resolution points to DC Water Program to replace public lead service lines in the DC Office of Inspector General report and Safe Water Engineering Assessment that find that the DC Water Program to be inadequate. The resolution then goes on to describe the legislative action on the issue by Councilmember Louis George and provides the high-level overview of the noted bill that was referred recently on March 21 to the Committee on Transportation and the Environment. The resolution also notes that the FY24 budget proposal allocates $0 to a District Department of Energy and Environment program to replace lead service lines. The resolution expresses 4B's strong support for the proposed legislation, calls for a committee hearing, and calls for additional considerations for the bill, including a clarification around single-family and multifamily buildings, stronger equity considerations regarding past exposure to lead when scheduling replacement work, establishing a helpline or a clinic, additional information regarding the risk of lead lines in homes, strengthening the public awareness campaign around additional ANC engagement than planned, stronger coordination between DC Water and DDOT to seek scheduling efficiencies, and also to restore that $10 million zeroed out in the FY24 budget and fully funding the lead service line replacement efforts. And so that's the summary of the resolution.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Palmer.
Yes, I'd just like to add on a few things if that's all right.
Sorry, I meant to put it to you. It's very
It's
late.
okay.
Sorry.
I actually would like to thank Commissioner Gilligan for leading on this, and as well as our Ward 4 council member for her focus on urgency and equity in lead line replacement. I think some of the very important things that this resolution asks for are including ensuring that multifamily buildings are not left out or treated differently, including past exposure to lead within the equity analysis, which is something that can be rooted in building code investigations and violations, and that we've seen and heard about in public housing, and including a helpline or clinic for residents to understand the impact of lead service lines and the need for and procedures related to replacement. I think these are good, tangible, meaningful things that could add value to what is already pretty positive legislation.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, is there a motion?
Move to adopt the resolution.
Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I believe that was everyone, but just to be safe, any opposition? Any abstentions? No. All right. With that, I think that we are able to adjourn. And I thank everyone for hanging in there. I greatly appreciate it. Let's all make sure we get to work on time tomorrow. Everybody have a great evening.
Bye,
Good night.
everyone.